The call came on a Thursday afternoon while I was calibrating load sensors at a bridge collapse site in Georgetown. The detective's voice was measured, careful. "Mr. Trump, we need you at the county morgue. We have a Jane Doe from the Westbrook tenement collapse. Possible ID match to a missing persons case." I lowered my laser distance measurer. Confused. "Detective, I consult on structural failures, not victim identification. Unless you need cause of collapse analysis, I think you have the wrong engineer." Silence stretched across the line. Then, "Mr. Trump, the medical examiner found something. A birthmark. It matches a genetic marker in our database. Your son's database. From his DMV records. I need you here, within the hour." 20 minutes later, when I walked into that sterile examination room, the coroner pulled back a white sheet. What I saw violated every principle of structural logic I'd ever known. Thank you for being here and giving this story your time. Before we dig deeper into what Roland discovered, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments. Let's see how far this investigation reaches. And subscribe if you want to follow this case to its conclusion. Some details in this narrative have been adapted for storytelling purposes, but the core architecture of deception you're about to witness is devastatingly real. Rain hammered against the skeletal remains of the Westbrook tenement that Thursday afternoon in mid-November. I was documenting the failure points: rebar corrosion in column C7, unauthorized modifications to the load-bearing walls, the same forensic work I'd done for 15 years since leaving high-rise design. At 55, my hands knew the rhythm. Measure, photograph, calculate. The smell of concrete dust mixing with the coffee in my dented thermos. The coroner's van had arrived an hour earlier. I'd noted it, peripherally. Structural engineers and death investigators often work the same scenes, but I was focused on the fracture patterns in the foundation. The call came while I was photographing a critical shear failure. I almost didn't answer. "Mr. Trump." "Roland Trump. Speaking. This is Detective Harlan Webb, Metro Homicide. Are you at the Westbrook site?" My stomach dropped with the irrational speed of bad news. "Is this about my son, Nico?" "Your son is fine, sir." The detective's voice had that practiced calm that meant something was very wrong. "But I need you to come to the county morgue. Now." "Detective, I think there's been a confusion. I'm a forensic structural engineer, not a medical." "Mr. Trump." He cut me off. "We have a Jane Doe from the Westbrook collapse. Female, early 20s. The medical examiner found a distinctive birthmark during the preliminary examination. A crescent-shaped mark below the left clavicle." My hand tightened on the phone. "Nico had that mark. Identical placement. Your son's biometric data is in our system from a previous traffic incident. The match flagged our database." "Mr. Trump, I need you to view the body." "That's impossible. Nico is male. He's—" "I know what your son is, Mr. Trump. That's why you need to get here." The county morgue was a concrete box on the east side, designed with the aesthetic sensibility of a parking garage. Functional. Cold. I'd analyzed its foundation retrofit 3 years ago, seismic upgrades. Nothing poetic. Detective Webb met me in the hallway. Mid-40s. The kind of weathered face you get from seeing too many bodies pulled from wreckage. "Mr. Trump, before we go in, I need to prepare you. The victim sustained significant trauma from the building collapse. But there are identifying features that— just show me." He led me into the examination room. Stainless steel. Chemical smell. The body lay on a table, under a white sheet. The medical examiner, a thin woman with gray-streaked hair pulled back tight, nodded at Webb. "Mr. Trump," she said quietly. "I'm Dr. Okafor. I need you to look carefully at the facial structure and the birthmark I'm about to show you." She pulled back the sheet to the shoulders. The world fractured. The face was damaged, laceration across the forehead. Contusions, but the bone structure was exact. Same angular jaw, same straight nose, same orbital spacing. Not similar. Identical. And below the left clavicle, the crescent-shaped birthmark. Perfect mirror. Of Nico's. "I calculate point of failure for a living," I heard myself say. "I never calculated this." Dr. Okafor's voice was gentle. "Mr. Trump, We ran expedited DNA analysis on epithelial samples. The results are unusual. She handed me a tablet. I stared at the genetic profile, my engineer's brain struggling to process data that made no structural sense. The DNA is a 99.9% familial match to your son, she said. But your son is currently sitting in the lobby, very much alive. Webb stepped closer. Mr. Trump, when's the last time you saw your ex-wife? Genevieve. The name felt foreign in my mouth. 22 years ago. She left when Nico was 3 months old. Did she give you a reason? She said the infrastructure of our marriage had fundamental design flaws. Those were her exact words. I looked back at the body. We had one child. One. Nico. There was never, but even as I said it, I remembered. Genevieve had looked at me and said, there were complications. We lost one. I'd been too devastated to ask questions. Too trusting to demand proof. Mr. Trump, Dr. Okafor said carefully, this victim has defensive wounds. DNA under the fingernails. We expedited that analysis too. She paused. It's a match to this individual. But there's something you need to understand. This body, this isn't your daughter. I stared at her. Then who? The DNA under the victim's fingernails is a 99.9% match, Webb said slowly. To someone who shares your son's genetic profile. Mr. Trump, we think your daughter killed this woman. And then she ran. The fluorescent lights above hummed like stress frequencies in steel. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. One stopped shaking. I didn't see a corpse, I said quietly. I saw a ghost. Webb pulled out his phone and showed me grainy security footage from the collapse site. Timestamp, 2 hours before the structure failed. A figure in dark clothing, moving through the condemned building. Female. Early 20s. When she turned toward the camera for one brief moment, I saw Nico's face staring back at me. Physics doesn't lie, I said. Only people do. The door opened. Nico came in fast, still wearing his parkour gear, chalk dust on his hands from whatever urban exploration he'd been doing. His face was tight with panic. Dad, you said morgue. You said emergency. What? He stopped when he saw Detective Webb. Then he looked at me, trying to read the catastrophe in my expression. Sit down, Nico. I'd rather stand. His voice had that edge it got when he was fighting off one of his episodes, the phantom pains he'd had since childhood, the ones 3 therapists had failed to explain. What happened? Webb pulled out a photograph. Do you recognize this person? Nico took it. I watched his face change confusion, then recognition, then something close to terror. He touched his own cheek, as if checking it was real. His breathing accelerated. That's... His voice broke. That's my face. Who is this? Her name is Sia Trump, I said. She's 22. Your twin sister. Nico grabbed the back of a chair. The knuckles went white. Twin? I don't have. He stared at the photo again, unable to deny the mirror staring back at him. How? Your mother told me our daughter died at birth. She lied. She gave Sia up for adoption the day you were born. Mom knew. Nico's voice went hollow. She knew I had a sister. There's more, Webb said. He opened a file. We've been tracking a high-end identity brokerage operation for 18 months. They call it Aegis. It's run by your mother, Mr. Trump. Genevieve Streetjohn, she changed her name after the divorce. She and her partner, Sterling Voss, provide completely untraceable new identities for criminals. Oligarchs. Anyone who can pay. He laid out surveillance photos. Genevieve, barely aged, clinical and cold, in expensive minimalist fashion. Beside her, a man in his 50s with the bland face of corporate evil. 8 confirmed clients over 3 years, Webb continued. But here's where it gets complicated. 6 weeks ago, we intercepted communications suggesting they were looking for someone, a specific genetic profile. We didn't understand why until yesterday. He pulled out another document. Your daughter Sia, she wasn't just kidnapped, Mr. Trump. She was retrieved. Aegis has been using her biometric data as an encryption key for their offshore data vaults. Her DNA, her fingerprints, her retinal patterns. She's the biological password to billions in untraceable assets. Nico's face had gone gray. She isn't a missing person. She's a stolen key. Exactly. Webb's expression was grim. The body in the morgue is one of Aegis's operatives, sent to retrieve Sia. Your daughter fought back and ran. But Mr. Trump, here's what you need to understand. Genevieve can't let her stay missing. If Sia disappears permanently, every client loses access to their new identity. The entire operation collapses. Then she's being hunted, I said. By professionals. Former military contractors. We've identified at least 4 operatives deployed in the last 72 hours. Nico suddenly gasped, doubling over. His hand went to his ribs. Cold. He choked out. Metal. I can feel. Nico. I grabbed his shoulder. He looked up at me, eyes wide with recognition. The headaches. The phantom pains I've had my whole life. Dad, they weren't in my head. I was feeling her. His breath came faster. Right now. She's cold. Concrete. She's underground. She's... He lurched toward the wall, pressing his palm against it. She's terrified. Webb stared. What are you talking about? Mirror touch synesthesia, I said, the pieces clicking into brutal clarity. He feels what she feels. He's always felt it. We thought he was ill, but he's connected to her. Nico straightened, sweat on his forehead. She's in the industrial district. Near the river. I can smell oil and rust. Webb pulled out his radio. We need units to... No, I cut him off. My voice was cold, calculated. If you send police, Genevieve will activate her extraction protocols. She'll move Sia somewhere we'll never find her, or worse. Mr. Trump, let us handle. My son is the radar. My daughter is the target. I looked at Webb. I spent 20 years inspecting foundations, never realizing I was living in a sinkhole. Detective, I'm going to find my daughter. You can help me, or you can file paperwork while she dies. Outside the morgue, under clouds threatening rain, Nico grabbed my arm. His hand shook. I had a sister, he said, voice breaking. All those nights I woke up screaming from someone else's nightmares. That was her. She's been alone this whole time, and I felt every second of it. I put my hand over his. He looked at me. The pain in his eyes. Something I finally understood. What if I lose the signal? You won't. I pulled out my phone, already calling the one person reckless enough to help us. Because a twin is a backup drive for the soul, and we're about to hack into the system. The rain started. Somewhere in this city, in cold concrete darkness, my daughter was waiting. Genevieve thought she could engineer the perfect crime, hiding her in plain sight within the foundation of her empire. She forgot one thing. I'm the man who finds the cracks. The hospital archives were in the basement of Mercy General, 3 floors below the maternity ward where my children were born. 22 years ago, I'd paced those upper hallways, waiting for news. I'd never thought to question what was filed down here in the dark. Nico sat beside me at the microfiche reader, his leg bouncing with nervous energy. Every few minutes, he'd press his hand to his chest. Feeling for phantom sensations, I now understood were real. Still there? I asked. Yeah, faint, like a pulse through concrete. He swallowed. She's resting. Or unconscious. I can't tell which. I threaded the film into the reader, scrolling through October 2002. Birth records, death certificates, the bureaucratic paper trail of lives beginning and ending. My hands were steady, but only because I'd trained them to be. There. October 15th, 2002. Twin birth. Trump. Genevieve. 2 infants. Male. 6 pounds 4 ounces. Viable. Female. 5 pounds 11 ounces. Deceased. I stared at the death certificate. Cause. Respiratory failure. Time. 3:47 a.m. Attending physician. Dr. Helen Mordecai. The death certificate was signed by a doctor who didn't exist, I said quietly. Nico leaned closer. What? I pulled up the hospital staff directory on my phone, cross-referencing the medical board database. Dr. Helen Mordecai, licensed 1987, resigned 1994, died in a car accident in 1998. She couldn't have signed this certificate. She'd been dead 4 years when you were born. So Mom forged it, or had someone forge it. I photographed the document, noting the digital signature code at the bottom. Too clean, too perfect. Modern forgery masked as period-accurate paperwork. She didn't just lie about your sister dying. She built a false foundation and buried the evidence. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Webb. Found something. Call me. I stepped into the hallway, Nico following. Webb answered on the first ring. Mr. Trump, we got a hit on facial recognition from the Westbrook site. Your daughter was caught on a traffic camera 18 hours ago, heading east on Route 40. But here's the thing, she wasn't running away from the city. She was running towards something. Toward what? We don't know yet. But Mr. Trump, I need to tell you something. This isn't a missing persons case anymore. We intercepted communications from an encrypted server. Your ex-wife's people aren't trying to find Sia. They're trying to contain her. Contain? Their words, not mine. Webb's voice dropped. Mr. Trump, whatever your daughter knows, whatever she took from that Westbrook building, he just can't let it go public. She isn't missing. She's escaping. The load shifted. That familiar phrase I used in my reports when describing the moment before catastrophic failure. When the stress redistributes, seeking the weakest point, and the structure realizes it can't hold. We're going after her, I said. Mr. Trump, you said she's heading east. Give me the coordinates. Silence. Then, Route 40, mile marker 73. Last seen 2 hours ago. Mr. Trump, if you find her first, you call me immediately. Do you understand? Understood. I hung up. Nico was staring at me, one hand pressed to his temple. She's moving, he said. I can feel motion. Vehicle. She's in something moving. Then we move too. 300 miles away, in a climate-controlled clean room on the 40th floor of the Vanguard Tower, Genevieve Street. John stood before a wall of screens, each displaying data streams that represented lives erased and rebuilt. She looked younger than 55. Biohacking, disciplined nutrition, surgical precision in every aspect of her existence. Her gray suit was architectural sharp lines, no softness. She studied the blinking red dot on the map, tracking the vehicle, carrying asset designation Sia Primary. She's still offline, Sterling Voss said behind her. He was shorter, meticulous, with the affect of a man who viewed human beings as code to be optimized. The biometric tracker shows elevated stress markers, but she hasn't attempted communication. The sedation protocols are holding. For now. Genevieve's voice was clinical. How long until we reach the secondary facility? 4 hours. The team has orders to maintain minimal contact. No interrogation until we've secured the encryption keys. Genevieve turned, her expression unreadable. She killed Morrison. A trained operative. That changes the risk assessment. Morrison underestimated her. Voss pulled up footage on the central screen grainy security video from the Westbrook tenement. Sia, fighting with desperate efficiency, using a steel pipe to break Morrison's knee, then running. The prototype has developed survival instincts we didn't account for. Don't call her that. Genevieve's voice sharpened. She's not a prototype. She's a biological key that learned to think for itself. That's the problem. Voss raised an eyebrow. The problem is that her brother is still active. Mirror touch synesthesia, you knew about this condition when you separated them. You knew he'd feel her pain. I knew he'd feel sensations. I didn't predict he'd develop them into a tracking system. Genevieve crossed her arms. Has Roland made contact with him yet? According to our surveillance, yes. They're together. The detective showed them the morgue footage. Then Roland knows. He knows. Genevieve stared at the blinking dot. watching her daughter move through the grid like a fault line spreading through concrete. She'd spent 22 years building Aegis into something perfect, untraceable, unbreakable, a fortress of deleted identities and reconstructed lives. The entire architecture depended on Sia's biometric data remaining encrypted, controlled, contained. "What are the odds Roland interferes?" Voss asked. 100%. Genevieve's voice was cold. "He's a forensic engineer. He finds structural failures. I just became his next case study." Voss moved to the console, fingers flying over the keyboard. "We can relocate the asset to the offshore facility. Cut all digital ties. By the time Roland tracks the paper trail, he won't track paper, he'll track pain." Genevieve turned to face him fully. "His son is a living GPS. As long as Sia's heart is beating, Nico will know where she is. That's the flaw in my design. Then we fix the flaw." The words hung in the sterile air. Voss's expression didn't change, but the implication was clear. Genevieve walked to the window, looking down at the city 40 floors below. Tiny lights. Tiny lives. All of them built on foundations they never questioned. She'd questioned everything. Optimized everything. Removed the redundancies. Sia had been the redundancy. Nico had been the priority. One child to carry the legacy. One child to fund the empire. It was efficient. It was logical. But logic had a breaking point. "Terminate the prototype," Genevieve said quietly. "We can't afford loose ends." Voss nodded. "I'll send the order." "Not yet." Genevieve's reflection in the glass was ghostly, translucent. "Roland will come. He'll bring Nico. When they do, we'll have all three assets in one location. Then we solve the problem permanently. You're using your daughter as bait. I'm using a structural weakness to collapse the investigation." Genevieve turned back to the screens. "Roland taught me that. Every building has a failure point. You just have to apply the right pressure." The red dot continued moving east, carrying the girl who was never supposed to exist, toward a trap built by the mother who'd erased her. On the screen, data scrolled past. Names deleted. Lives reconstructed. The architecture of lies. 40 stories high, waiting for the man who knew how to bring it all down. The chemical smell of the morgue followed me into the parking garage. Formaldehyde, disinfectant, the antiseptic scent of death processed and cataloged. I stopped beside my truck, keys in hand, but couldn't make myself open the door. Nico was already in the passenger seat, his phone out, mapping Route 40, planning our pursuit with the single-minded focus I recognized from myself at his age. But I stood there, breathing in that sterile smell, and felt the load shift. 22 years collapsed into 22 seconds. The delivery room had smelled like this. Clinical, cold, too clean. October 15th, 2002, 2:47 a.m., Mercy General, 4th floor. I'd been awake for 19 hours, pacing the hallways, while Genevieve labored behind closed doors. They told me to wait. Complications. I'd pressed my hands against the wall, feeling the texture of the paint, counting cinder blocks to stay calm. When they finally let me in, Genevieve was sitting up in the hospital bed, hair pulled back, no tears. She looked at me with the same expression she used when reviewing architectural plans, assessing, calculating. "Twins," she said. Her voice was steady. They didn't catch it on the early ultrasounds. 2 heartbeats. They were hidden behind each other. I moved to her bedside, reaching for her hand. "I'm fine." She pulled her hand back, adjusting the IV line with mechanical precision. "The boy is viable. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Strong respiratory function. They're running tests now." "And the girl?" The pause was so brief I almost missed it. A micro-hesitation, like a hairline fracture in concrete you wouldn't notice unless you were looking for it. "Complications," Genevieve said. "Respiratory failure. They did everything they could. Cree stayed. Today Vermast. We're Resman today. And we need binds." The nurse brought Nico in small, red-faced, screaming with the fury of new life. I held him, feeling the weight of him, the realness. But my eyes went to the corner of the room where a second bassinet stood empty, a white sheet draped over it. "Can I see her?" I asked. "Roland, don't." Genevieve's voice was sharp. "It won't help. Roland, I need to say goodbye. You're holding your son. That's what matters now." I looked at her then. Really looked. Her face was composed. No tears. No grief in her eyes. Just that clinical assessment. Like she was calculating load-bearing capacity. She didn't look at the empty crib. She looked at her watch. The detail hit me now, 22 years later, with the force of revelation. She'd checked the time. 3:47 a.m. Noted it like an appointment kept. A deadline met. I'd been too shattered to question it. Too grateful that Nico was alive. I'd mourned the daughter I'd never hold, and Genevieve had. Moved on. Efficiently. Completely. 3 months later, she was gone. "Dad?" I blinked. Nico was standing outside the truck now, hand on my shoulder. "You okay?" "You just stopped." "I'm remembering," I said quietly. "Things I should have questioned." "Like what?" I unlocked the truck, climbed in. Nico got back in the passenger side, watching me with concern that mirrored my own features 25 years ago. "Your mother left when you were 3 months old," I said, starting the engine. "She told me the marriage had structural flaws. I thought she meant us, that I'd failed her somehow. But that wasn't it." "Then what was it?" "She'd already completed her transaction." The words felt heavy, like bearing weight I'd been carrying without realizing. "She didn't leave because we failed. She left because she'd gotten what she needed. One child to raise, one child to sell. The perfect optimization." Nico went still. "She sold my sister. Seeing, not for money. For something more valuable to her leverage. A biological key she could control." I pulled out of the parking garage, heading east. Aegis didn't start 22 years ago, but the foundation was laid then. She needed genetic material she could manipulate. Identical twins, but separated. One she could track, one she could hide. Why not just use DNA samples? Why keep Sia alive? Because biometric encryption isn't static. It requires living tissue retinal patterns that change with light. Fingerprints that respond to temperature. Voice patterns that shift with emotion. She needed Sia alive and accessible, but not aware. A biological password that never knew it was being used. The highway stretched ahead, empty at this hour. Rain started again, light drops on the windshield. "I built this house on sand," I said, "and I didn't even check the soil." Nico looked at me. "It means I was a forensic engineer who didn't inspect his own foundation." I took Genevieve's word. I trusted the documentation, the death certificate, the hospital records, her grief that I now realize was performance. I gripped the steering wheel. Every building I've ever analyzed. I found the original flaw. The first compromise in the design that led to eventual collapse. This you, me, Sia, we're living in the aftermath of Genevieve's original design. She built us to fail, but we're still standing. Barely. I glanced at him. "You've been feeling phantom pain for 22 years. Headaches, nausea, unexplained injuries. You thought you were broken, but you weren't. You were connected. Your body knew what your mind didn't, that your sister was out there. Suffering. And my voice caught. I raised you alone, telling you your mother abandoned us, never knowing she'd already taken half of you with her." Nico pressed his hand to his chest again. That familiar gesture I'd watched him make 1,000 times. "She's sleeping now. The pain is quiet. Sedation or exhaustion. I don't know. But Dad, what if we're too late? What if Genevieve? A structural flaw isn't a mistake," I said, cutting him off. "It's a history. Every crack tells you where the stress was applied, how long it's been failing, what load it can't bear. Genevieve made one critical error in her design." "What error?" "She underestimated the tensile strength of the bond she tried to sever. She thought separation would delete the connection. But twins don't work like that. You're not two separate structures. You're one structure built in two locations. And now, I accelerated, the highway signs blurring past. Now we're going to use that connection to bring her empire down. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. I stared at the message, then showed it to Nico. "It's her," he whispered. "It's Mom. She's been tracking us this whole time." Another text. "The son feels the daughter. How poetic. But you're feeling phantom signals now. I've moved the asset. You're chasing echoes." Nico gasped, his hand going to his throat. "No, I can still." He stopped, uncertainty flooding his face. "I thought I could, but she's jamming the signal." I pulled onto the shoulder, mind racing. "She knows about your connection. She's using it against us." A third text. "You were always good at finding failures, Roland. But you never understood why things break. They break because someone designed them to. See you soon." The address is already in your GPS. I looked at the navigation screen. A new destination had loaded automatically. Vanguard Tower. Downtown. Genevieve's headquarters. "It's a trap," Nico said. "Of course it is." I pulled back onto the highway, but turned the wheel west. Toward the city, toward the woman who'd engineered my life to collapse. But every trap has a weakness. Every design has a flaw. What's hers? I thought of Genevieve in that hospital bed, checking her watch while our daughter died or didn't die. "Arrogance," I said. "She thinks she's built something unbreakable. But I've spent 20 years proving that nothing is." The rain intensified. Somewhere ahead, in a tower built on lies, my daughter waited. She'd forgotten one fundamental principle of engineering. The bigger the structure, the harder the fall. We didn't go to Vanguard Tower, not yet. I drove to my workshop instead. The one place Genevieve had never understood, my cathedral of wood and steel where I'd rebuilt myself after she left. Nico followed me inside without speaking, his hand still pressed to his chest, tracking sensations only he could feel. I flipped on the overhead lights. The workshop materialized around us, half-finished furniture projects, structural models. The organized chaos of a man who thought better with his hands occupied. On the far wall, a mirror I'd salvaged from a demolished Victorian hung at an angle, reflecting the room back at itself. "Sit," I said, pointing to the workbench. "I don't want to sit. I want to—" "Nico, sit." He sat, jaw tight. I pulled out the photograph Detective Webb had given us, Sia's face, mirror image of his own, and placed it on the bench between us. "I need to tell you something about the day you were born," I said. "Something I should have told you years ago, but I didn't know was a lie until today. Mom told you the twin died." "I know. You said—" "That's not the part I'm talking about." I leaned against the bench, choosing my words with the precision I used for failure analysis reports. "The day your mother left, you were 3 months old. She didn't just walk out. She took something with her. Medical records. Birth documentation. Your hospital bracelet. I thought she was being cruel, taking the only proof your sister existed. But she wasn't being cruel. She was being thorough." Nico's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" "She was erasing evidence. Not of your sister's death. Of her birth." I pulled out my phone, showing him the forged death certificate. "Dr. Helen Mordecai signed this document. But she'd been dead 4 years when you were born. Your mother didn't just lie about what happened. She manufactured the entire narrative. Why are you telling me this now? Because you need to understand what you are to her. Not a son. A proof of concept." I met his eyes. "You've had phantom pains your entire life. Headaches that appear without cause. Nausea. Injuries that manifest without impact. 3 different doctors diagnosed anxiety. Psychosomatic symptoms. Early onset migraines. But they were wrong." Nico stood up abruptly, backing away from the bench. "Don't. You're not broken, Nico. You're connected. Stop. Every sensation you've felt, every unexplained pain that was Sia. Miles away, suffering, and your nervous system registering it because you're genetically identical. Mirror touch synesthesia, at a level science hasn't documented because twins are almost never separated and... Stop! Nico grabbed a chisel from the bench and hurled it at the mirror. The glass exploded. Shards rained down, catching the overhead light like falling stars. I didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched my son stand there, chest heaving, surrounded by fragments of his own reflection. Then he froze. His hand went to his head. Eyes widened. He stumbled backward, hitting the wall, sliding down to sit on the floor. His breathing turned shallow, rapid. Nico. I felt it. His voice was barely a whisper. A blow. Right side of the skull. I felt. He looked up at me, and I saw recognition there. Terror and recognition. She's being hit, right now. Someone is hitting her. I knelt beside him. Where? I don't. He pressed both palms to his temples. It's dark. Cold. Metal smell. Underground. She's... Another gasp. Running. She's running. Can you see anything? I'm not crazy, Dad. I'm connected. His eyes locked on mine. I'm not seeing. I'm feeling. The vibrations under her feet. The texture of the walls when she touches them. The taste in her mouth. Copper. Fear. Blood. Focus on the vibrations. What kind of surface? Concrete. Ridged. Old. He closed his eyes, breathing through the sensations. There's a rhythm. A pulse. Not her heartbeat. Mechanical. Distant but constant. Subway trains. The pieces assembled in my mind with structural clarity. She's in the tunnel system. Highway 5 read. With cap today. Nico opened his eyes. How do you know? Because your mother is brilliant and ruthless. She wouldn't move a high-value asset through the city streets, where traffic cameras could track her. But the old subway tunnels, the abandoned sections from the 1,940 seconds expansion that never finished, those are off the grid. No surveillance. No digital footprint. I stood, moving to my desk, where I kept municipal infrastructure maps. The maintenance records show at least 12 miles of unused tunnels beneath the financial district. Dad, she's terrified. I can feel her heart racing. There are footsteps behind her. Multiple people. They're hurting her. I spread the map across the workbench, moving her through the tunnels toward an extraction point. Probably a service entrance that connects to one of Genevieve's properties. Nico stood, unsteady, and came to the map. She broke hers. The car accident at 17. I walked away with bruises, but I felt broken ribs for weeks after. Because she had broken ribs, I looked at him. Your entire life, you've been living two lives simultaneously. Yours and hers. Every injury she suffered, you felt. Every moment of fear, pain, isolation, you carried half of it. His hand trembled on the map. Why didn't you see it? His hand. Because I was looking for psychological causes, not biological ones. Because I trusted doctors who worked from the assumption you were a single unit, not half of a pair. I touched his shoulder. Because I failed you, both of you. We don't have time for guilt. Nico's voice hardened. Where is she? I studied the map, calculating vectors, travel times, logical extraction points. If they entered the tunnel system from Vanguard Tower's basement, there's a service connection here, built in the 1,950 seconds, and they're moving her east toward the river. They'd use the old Sector 4 junction. It's the only section with vehicle access that's not flagged in the current municipal database. Nico suddenly gasped again, hand shooting to his face. The subway. Sector 4. I can smell the ozone. He looked at me, nose wrinkling. That burnt electrical smell. And something else. Rust. Standing water. That's it. Sector 4 flooded partially in the 90 seconds. They never drained it completely. I grabbed my keys, my phone, the LED flashlight I used for structural inspections. How much time do we have? I don't know. She's slowing down. Either she's exhausted or... He stopped. Or they're getting closer. Dad, I can feel them closing in. The footsteps are louder. She's trapped. Then we move now. I headed for the door, but Nico didn't follow. I turned. He was standing by the shattered mirror, looking at his fractured reflection in the remaining shards. What if I lose the connection? His voice was small. What if we get down there and I can't feel her anymore? You won't lose it. You've had it for 22 years. You just didn't know what it was. You won't lose it. You just didn't know what it was. But if they sedate her, then we navigate the old-fashioned way. Structural logic. Stress analysis. Fear. I met his eyes. But Nico, I need you to understand something. Once we go down there, we're not just rescuing your sister. We're declaring war on your mother. She'll come at us with everything she has. Every resource. Every mercenary. Every lie. Good. He stepped over the broken glass, moving toward me. I've been feeling my sister die in pieces my whole life. It's time someone felt us fight back. We left the workshop together. The rain had stopped, but the streets were slick, reflecting neon and fractured patterns. Somewhere beneath our feet, in darkness and cold water, my daughter ran from hunters who saw her as property. But they'd made a critical miscalculation. They thought they were hunting one girl. They didn't realize they were hunting twins. And one of those twins was currently calculating the exact structural weaknesses of every tunnel system in the city, guided by pain that had finally found its purpose. Gravity is the only judge that matters. And we were about to bring the judgment down. The demonstration room on the 42nd floor of Vanguard Tower was designed to intimidate. Black glass walls, temperature controlled to exactly 68 degrees, holographic displays suspended in midair, like digital ghosts. Genevieve Street. John stood at the head of the table, wearing confidence like the tailored gray suit she'd chosen specifically for this meeting. Across from her sat Dmitry Volkov, former general, current arms trafficker, and the kind of client who paid in cryptocurrency mined from the suffering of nations. He was 53, heavy-set, with the predatory patience of a man who'd ordered massacres with the same ease others ordered coffee. You understand, Volkov said in accented English. I have used services like yours before. Passports, credentials, bank accounts, all can be purchased. Why should I pay your premium? Because those services leave traces. Genevieve gestured, and the holographic display materialized between them. A new passport is still a document. A new identity is still a mask. What we offer at Aegis isn't concealment. It's complete erasure and reconstruction. She pulled up a file. A man's face appeared. Middle Eastern. Mid-30s. The kind of unremarkable features that existed in thousands of database photos. This is Karim Nasser, former intelligence operative for a regime that fell 3 years ago. Wanted by Interpol for crimes against humanity. Extradition warrants in 14 countries. Genevieve's voice was clinical. 2 weeks ago, he came to us. Today, Karim Nasser no longer exists. Volkov leaned forward. You killed him? We did something more permanent than death. We deleted him. She gestured again. The holographic display split, showing cascading code. Every digital footprint erased. Birth records, school transcripts, employment history, medical files, security footage spanning 38 years. We didn't just alter them. We removed them from every database, every backup server, every archived system. Impossible. Government systems have redundancies. Identity is a construct, Genevieve said. We offer the demolition. She pulled up another image. The same man, but different. New face, courtesy of surgical intervention. New fingerprints, chemically altered. New retinal patterns, thanks to experimental procedures her medical team had perfected. Meet Adrian Volker. Austrian national. Inherited wealth. No criminal record because he never committed a crime because he's never existed until now. We didn't give Nasser a new identity. We built him a new history. 20 years of fabricated documentation, planted across databases worldwide. Photographs from a childhood that never happened. School records from institutions that confirm his attendance. Tax returns. Property deeds. A life so thoroughly constructed that even he believes it. Volkov studied the screens. And the physical evidence? DNA databases? Biometric border systems? Handled. Genevieve pulled up a new display, complex genetic sequences. This is where Aegis differs from every other service. We don't just change the documentation. We change the biological signature. Sterling Voss emerged from the shadows behind Genevieve, tablet in hand. He was precise, bloodless, the kind of man who spoke in algorithms. Our encryption system, Voss said, is based on living biological markers. Specifically, a unique genetic baseline that serves as the master key for all client transformations. When we alter your biometric data, we're not randomizing it. We're encoding it against a source template that exists nowhere in any government database. Whose template? Volkov asked. Genevieve and Voss exchanged a glance. This was the part clients paid millions to understand and billions to never reveal. A genetic dead end, Genevieve said carefully. An individual whose DNA was never officially recorded. No birth certificate, no medical history, no digital footprint. Someone who, according to every database in existence, was never born. The girl isn't a person, Voss added. She's a master key. Volkov's eyes narrowed. You're using a human being as an encryption key? We're using a biological algorithm, Genevieve corrected. Her genetic markers contain specific sequences, mutations that occur in less than 0.001% of the population. Those sequences allow us to encrypt client data in a way that's mathematically unbreakable. To decrypt, you'd need her living tissue, her retinal scan, her voice pattern, her fingerprints, all simultaneously. And if something happens to this key? The question hung in the climate-controlled air. Genevieve's expression didn't change, but Voss shifted slightly. A microtel that Volkov, trained in interrogation, caught immediately. She's missing, isn't she? Volkov stood. This demonstration is theater. Your system is compromised. Our asset experienced a temporary containment breach, Genevieve said, voice steady. She's currently being recovered. Temporary? Volkov's laugh was harsh. How long? 72 hours. 72 hours. Volkov moved toward the window, looking down at the city below. The encryption remains secure, but new transformations are. Paused. Molo. High Getbon. New transformations. Paused. Volkov turned. Miss Street. John, I was prepared to pay you $40 million to erase my past. But if your master key is in the wind, if she's talking to authorities, if she's not talking to anyone. She's running. And when cornered animals run, they make mistakes. Genevieve pulled up a new display, a map of the city's underground. A red dot blinked in Sector 4. We're tracking her through the subway tunnels. My recovery team has her contained. Within the hour, she'll be back in our facility. And if she's not, Genevieve met his eyes. Then we implement Protocol 7. Voss looked up sharply. Genevieve, what is Protocol 7? Volkov demanded. A permanent solution to a temporary problem. Genevieve's voice was ice. If we lose her, we lose the encryption for billions in client data. 23 identities, currently active, would become vulnerable. We can't allow that. Katagal. You're talking about killing her. I'm talking about preventing systemic failure. Genevieve turned back to the holographic display. The asset was designed for a specific function. If she can no longer perform that function securely, she becomes a liability. Liabilities are deleted. Compfrinks / my common. Volkov studied her. You're very cold about this. I'm very practical about this. The girl's genetic material is already archived. We have tissue samples, blood work, full biometric profiles. In the event of termination, we can reconstruct the encryption key from stored data. It's less efficient than using the living source, but functional. Then why haven't you terminated her already? Because she's my daughter, Genevieve thought. Because 22 years ago, I made a choice to optimize rather than eliminate. Because some part of me, the part I've spent 2 decades surgically removing, still remembers holding 2 infants and choosing which one deserved a life. Because, she said aloud, living encryption is more robust than archived material. Biometric patterns change with time, environment, stress. A living key adapts. A dead one degrades. Her phone vibrated. A text from the recovery team. Asset located. Gentlemen, Genevieve said, pulling up live footage from her operative's helmet cameras. The demonstration continues. Endado. The screen showed tunnel darkness, flashlight beams cutting through shadow. And there a figure running, stumbling, turning to face the approaching team. Sia. Even through the grainy feed, Genevieve could see it. The same facial structure she'd passed to both children. The same determined jaw. The same gray eyes, now filled with terror and fury. Asset is cornered. The team leader's voice crackled through the speakers. Volkov leaned closer to the screen. She looks like a valuable commodity, Genevieve interrupted. Nothing more. On screen, Sia raised her hands, not in surrender but in desperate defense. Then she lunged. Not at the operatives, but at the tunnel wall, where a rusted service ladder led upward. Stop her, Voss shouted. But Sia was already climbing, moving with the desperate efficiency of someone who'd spent 72 hours learning to survive. The operatives fired tranquilizer darts. One hit her shoulder. She kept climbing. She's stronger than expected, Volkov observed. She's motivated, Genevieve corrected. Fear is an excellent performance enhancer. Sia reached a maintenance hatch, threw her weight against it. The metal shrieked, then she was through, disappearing into darkness above. The operative's camera followed, showing the ladder leading to street level, Voss said quietly. Genevieve's jaw tightened. On the screen, they saw Sia emerge into an alley, the tranquilizer dart still embedded in her shoulder. She pulled it out, stumbled, caught herself against a dumpster. Then she looked directly at the camera, hidden in the alley's security system, looked directly at Genevieve through 42 floors of glass and concrete, and smiled. She knows, Volkov said. She knows you're watching. Genevieve's phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. The blueprint was wrong from the start. R. Roland. It appears, Genevieve said, voice perfectly controlled, that our demonstration has become more compelling than anticipated. Mr. Volkov, you wanted to see what happens when a system faces catastrophic pressure. You're about to witness it in real time. 12W. She turned to Voss. Activate all assets. Find her. And find Roland before he reaches her first. And if he does? Voss asked. Genevieve looked at the frozen image of Sia on the screen, her daughter, her creation, her failure. Then we collapse the entire structure, she said, and bury them all in the rubble. The service entrance to Sector 4 was hidden behind a condemned building on Fulton Street, sealed with a rusted chain and a padlock that hadn't been opened in years. I cut through both with bolt cutters from my truck while Nico stood watch, one hand pressed to his ribs. She's closer, he said. The connection is stronger. I can feel her breathing. Fast or slow? Fast. Panicked. She's running. He winced. Something hit her. Shoulder. Sharp pain then. Numbness spreading. Tranquilizer. I yanked the chain free. Pulled open the steel door. It screamed on corroded hinges. Beyond was darkness and the smell of stagnant water. They're trying to take her alive. Number 4, with Cumbly 1 said. How much time do we have? Depends on the dosage. I clicked on my LED flashlight, the beam cutting through the black. But sedation takes 3 to 5 minutes to fully hit the system. If she's still moving, we have a window. We descended into the tunnel. Concrete stairs slick with moisture and decades of neglect. The temperature dropped 10 degrees within 20 feet. The sound of our footsteps echoed, multiplying into phantom footfalls that made it impossible to tell if we were alone. Nico stumbled, caught himself on the wall. The numbness is spreading. Her right arm is going slack. Can you still feel her direction? West. She's moving west. He pointed down the main tunnel. That way. We ran. The tunnel stretched ahead, lit only by my flashlight and the occasional emergency strip still functioning after decades. Water dripped from ceiling cracks. Graffiti from the 80 seconds covered the walls, territorial marks from urban explorers who'd found this place before the city sealed it. Wait. I stopped, shining the light on the ground. Fresh scuff marks in the sediment. Recent disturbance. Someone was here. Multiple people. Nico knelt, touching the ground. His hand came away wet. Blood. Hers? I don't know. I can't. He pressed his hand to his head. The sedation is messing with the connection. Everything feels distant now, like I'm underwater. I examined the ground more carefully. Boot prints. Military grade, probably size 11. At least 3 sets, moving in formation. And something else, a smaller print, running shoes, heading the opposite direction. She doubled back, I said. They chased her east. She circled around and went west. Smart. That's when they got her with the tranquilizer. She was running toward. Nico stood abruptly, shining his phone light ahead. Dad! Look, 20 feet down the tunnel. Something dark lay crumpled against the wall. Covered in patches and pins the exact style Nico wore. The kind urban explorers favored. Covered in reflective strips and carabiners. Nico picked it up, hands shaking. This is mine. I mean, not mine. But it's hers. She dressed like you. Same style, same choices. Probably never knowing why it felt right. I touched the fabric. She was here. The air is still warm. She's close. Dad. She's so close I can almost... Nico's eyes widened. Down. She went down. I swept the flashlight beam lower, finding what I'd missed in the shadows, a maintenance access hatch, partially open. Metal rungs descended into deeper darkness. Secondary tunnel system, I said. The original 1,940 seconds infrastructure. These run beneath the main tunnels. How do you know that? Because I studied these plans when the city hired me to assess seismic vulnerability 3 years ago. I pulled the hatch fully open. The lower tunnels were supposed to be sealed. If she's down there, she either knew about them or got very lucky. Nico started down the ladder. I followed, pulling the hatch mostly closed behind us. The lower tunnel was narrower, the ceiling only 7 feet high. Water pooled on the floor, ankle deep in places. The smell of rust and ozone was overwhelming. I can smell it, Nico said. The ozone. She was here. She touched these walls. He ran his hand along the concrete, following some sensory trail only he could perceive. This way. We moved through the tunnel, splashing through standing water. The architecture down here was older, more primitive, hand-poured concrete, from an era before modern engineering standards. I could see the stress fractures, the places where the structure was slowly failing under the weight of the city above. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Not ours. Coming from behind. Run, I said quietly. What? Run. We sprinted down the tunnel. Behind us, flashlight beams appeared multiple sources, moving fast. Tactical lights, too bright and too focused to be anything but professional equipment. We triggered a silent alarm, I said, breathing hard. When we opened that hatch, they're not police. They're not police. How do you know? Because police would have identified themselves by now. A voice echoed down the tunnel. Stop! Aegis security. You're trespassing on private property. Private property? Nico gasped. This is a city tunnel, not according to whatever paperwork your mother forged. I pulled him left, into a junction, where 3 tunnels intersected. Genevieve owns the access rights. Probably bought them through shell companies. She controls this entire sector. The footsteps were closer now. Maybe 30 seconds behind us. I swept my flashlight across the ceiling, calculating, analyzing, their ventilation shaft. Original 1,940 seconds installation. Cast iron, probably weighing 300 pounds, held by brackets that were mostly rust. and directly above a structural weak point where the concrete had spalled, exposing rebar. "You fight with guns," I said, pulling out my laser distance measurer. "I fight with gravity." "Dad, what are you—" "Keep running. Straight ahead. Don't stop until you reach the next junction." "I'm not leaving you." "You're not. You're giving me 30 seconds. I pointed ahead. "Go." Nico ran. I stayed, positioning myself beneath the ventilation shaft. The mercenaries rounded the corner, 3 of them. Tactical gear. Weapons drawn. Professional. Efficient. Exactly what Genevieve would hire. The lead operative aimed his weapon. "On the ground. Now. Him. 1. I aimed the laser measure at the brackets, holding the ventilation shaft. The red dot danced across corroded metal. "Tell Genevieve her building codes are about to fail inspection." I grabbed a piece of rebar from the rubble at my feet and swung it hard against the bracket. Once. Twice. The metal screamed. The operative realized what I was doing a second too late. "Fall back." The bracket gave way. 300 pounds of cast iron ventilation shaft dropped like judgment, hitting the concrete floor exactly where the structural fracture ran deepest. The impact sent shockwaves through the weakened foundation. Cracks spiderwebbed across the ceiling. Then the ceiling came down. Not the whole tunnel, just a 10-foot section, directly between me and the mercenaries. Concrete, rebar, decades of accumulated debris created an instant barrier. Dust filled the air, choking and thick. I heard coughing on the other side, muffled curses, radio chatter, then silence. I turned and ran, following Nico's path. Found him at the next junction, pressed against the wall, eyes wide. "You just brought down part of the tunnel," he said. "Controlled demolition. The rest of the structure is stable." I grabbed his arm. "But we bought maybe 10 minutes before they find another route." "Which way is Sia?" "Which way is Sia?" Nico closed his eyes, reaching for the connection through the sedation fog. "Ahead." The pain is quieter now, but she's there. She's waiting. Waiting or unconscious? I don't know. But Dad. He opened his eyes. "I can feel something else. Someone else nearby. Not the mercenaries. Someone. Watching. Genevieve. No. Someone between us and Sia. Someone who doesn't belong in these tunnels." We moved forward, more cautiously now. The tunnel curved, widening into what looked like an old maintenance station concrete platform, abandoned tool lockers, a rusted electrical panel still humming with residual current. And in the center of the platform, illuminated by a single emergency light, sat a figure. Small. Female. Dark hair matted with tunnel water. A tranquilizer dart still embedded in her shoulder, but her eyes open, alert. Watching us approach with the same gray eyes I saw in my son's face every day. Sia. She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at us with an expression that mixed terror and recognition in equal measure. Then, from the shadows behind her, someone else stepped into the light. A man in his 50s, expensive suit, ruined by tunnel grime, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who'd found exactly what he was looking for. "Mr. Trump," he said, his accent placing him somewhere in Eastern Europe. "Genevieve said you'd come. She said you wouldn't be able to resist." A structural engineer and his son, chasing shadows through the foundation of the city. He smiled. "My name is Dmitry Volkov, and your daughter is now my insurance policy." He pulled a gun from his jacket, aiming it not at us but at Sia's head. "Shall we negotiate?" he said. Volkov's gun didn't waver. Professional grip, steady hands, the kind of weapon discipline that came from years of pulling triggers without hesitation. "You're not with Genevieve," I said, buying time, analyzing angles. The tunnel was narrow, no cover. Nico stood frozen beside me, his connection to Sia making him feel the terror radiating from her in waves. "I was a client," Volkov said. Emphasis on was. "Your ex-wife promised me a new identity. What she delivered was a liability. When her encryption key escaped," he gestured at Sia with the gun barrel, "my $40 million investment became worthless. So I decided to collect the collateral myself. You can't use her without Genevieve's systems." "No, but Genevieve can't operate without her." Volkov smiled. Basic negotiation. I have what she needs. She gives me what I paid for. Everyone wins. Except Sia. The girl is a product, Mr. Trump. Products don't have preferences. Nico lunged. I grabbed him, but not before Volkov adjusted his aim, the gun now pointed directly at my son's chest. Emotional, Volkov observed. Genevieve said the twin bond made you predictable. She was right. Let me make a counteroffer, I said, my voice steady despite the adrenaline. Volkov laughed. You're unarmed. I'm not. Your math is wrong, engineer. My math is never wrong. I took one step forward. You have one gun, 3 targets, narrow tunnel. If you shoot me, Nico gets to you before you can fire again. If you shoot Nico, I do. And if you shoot Sia, I met his eyes. You lose your only leverage, and we have nothing left to lose. The calculation played across Volkov's face. He was a tactician, and tacticians recognized losing positions. Mexican standoff, he finally said. How do we resolve this? We don't. The voice came from behind us. I turned. 3 figures emerged from the tunnel we'd just escaped. Aegis mercenaries, covered in concrete dust but very much operational. They'd found another route faster than I'd calculated. The lead operative leveled his weapon at us. Mr. Volkov, Miss Street John sends her regards. She suggests you return her property. Volkov's expression hardened. I don't take suggestions. Neither does she. The operative fired, not at us, at the ceiling above Volkov. The bullet ricocheted, striking the electrical panel. Sparks exploded. The emergency light died, plunging us into darkness, broken only by tactical flashlights. In the chaos, I heard Sia move. Heard Nico gasp. Heard Volkov curse. In Russian. Then hands grabbed me, professional, efficient, and I was slammed against the tunnel wall. Zip ties bit into my wrists. Beside me, Nico struggled, but they had him too. The lights came back up, handheld floods the mercenaries had set up. Volkov was on the ground, disarmed, blood streaming from his temple, and Sia was being carried by 2 operatives, still semi-conscious from the tranquilizer, her body limp. The lead operative spoke into his radio. Package secured. Initiating transport to Medical Facility 7 for processing. No. Nico thrashed against his restraints. Don't take her. Please. The operative looked at us with professional disinterest. Mr. Trump, your son, Miss Street John, anticipated you'd interfere. She's prepared accommodations. Where are you taking her? I demanded. Somewhere you won't find her. Somewhere the connection can be properly severed. Severed. They hauled Sia away. I watched my daughter disappear into the darkness, seeing her face Nico's face for only the 3rd time in my life. Once in the morgue photo. Once in the security footage. And now, being taken from me again. The mercenaries left us zip-tied in the tunnel with Volkov, who was slowly regaining consciousness. No guards. They didn't need them. By the time we got free, Sia would be moved, processed, and locked down in whatever facility Genevieve had prepared. I calculate point of failure for a living, I said quietly, working the zip ties against a sharp edge of concrete. I never calculated this. It took 20 minutes to free ourselves using a piece of broken rebar. By then, the tunnel was empty except for the blood staining the concrete where Volkov had fallen. He'd crawled away, leaving a trail that disappeared into the darkness. Which way? Nico asked, his voice hollow. Can you feel her? He closed his eyes. Concentrated. Faint. The tranquilizer is fully in her system now. But yes. North. Above ground. Moving in a vehicle. We ran. Medical Facility 7 turned out to be a private clinic in the financial district, one of those anonymous buildings with tinted windows and no signage. The kind of place where the wealthy went for procedures they didn't want in their medical records. We watched from across the street as an unmarked van pulled into the underground garage. 3 minutes later, the lights came on in a 3rd-floor window. That's where they took her, Nico said, his hand pressed to his chest. I can feel the elevation change. She's going up. We entered through a service entrance. No alarms. Genevieve's people were confident enough not to bother with basic security. Or they wanted us to follow. The thought chilled me, but we didn't have a choice. The third floor was sterile. White walls, LED lights. The smell of antiseptic that reminded me of the morgue. We moved through empty corridors until we found the room where the lights were on. I opened the door. The room was empty. Just a medical chair in the center, leather restraints hanging open. A tray of instruments, syringes, monitoring equipment, things I couldn't identify. But no Sia. No mercenaries. No one. They were here, Nico said, stepping inside. I felt her in this room. I felt. He stopped, dropped to his knees. Nico! He couldn't speak. His lips were turning blue. He was drowning. But there was no water. Just air he couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. He finally choked out. She's going under. I looked at the medical equipment, saw the empty vial beside the tray, saw the label, propofol. Deep sedation protocol. They put her under, full anesthesia. I pulled Nico to his feet, forcing him to look at me. She's not drowning. She's being medicated. Breathe through it. Breathe. He gasped, fighting the phantom sensation of suffocation. We were 10 minutes too late. He whispered. I examined the room more carefully. The restraints on the chair caught my attention. I measured them with my eyes. The distance between the wrist straps. The length of the ankle restraints. The restraints are small, I said. Too small. What do you mean? These are size for a child. Or someone very small. I touched the leather. Still warm from recent use. Sia's an adult. These wouldn't fit her properly. Nico stared at the chair. Then, who? A sound. Soft. Coming from the corner of the room. We turned. A figure huddled in the shadows behind a medical cabinet. Small. Female. Not Sia younger. Maybe 16. She wore a hospital gown. Her wrists marked with restraint burns. They took her, the girl whispered. Her voice was hollow, traumatized. What tower? I knelt beside her. What do you mean doesn't exist? How? The ghost building. That's what they call it. 48 floors. But it's not on any map. Not in any database. She looked up at us with eyes that had seen too much. That's where they take the ones they're going to erase. The ones who become keys. Nico grabbed my arm. Dad. She's not talking about Sia. Ting. The girl shook her head. Your daughter isn't the first. We're others. I don't know how many are left. The load shifted. The entire structure of what I thought I understood cracked. How many? I asked. I was number 7. Your daughter was supposed to be number 12. But she ran before they could process her. Before they could. Before they could make her forget who she was. We didn't find her, Nico said, his voice numb. We found her fear. I stood, pulling out my phone. No signal this deep in the building. But I didn't need signal. I needed information. This ghost building, I said. Where is it? I don't know exactly, but I heard them talking. The woman your wife, she said it was built on a fault line. She said that was poetic. Something about everything she built being designed to fall. A building on a fault line. Not in any database. 48 floors. I knew exactly which building she meant. I'd consulted on it 6 years ago, a private tower. Construction permits filed under 17 different shell companies. Structural plans that deliberately obscured its true purpose. At the time, I'd flagged it as suspicious. But the money was good, and I'd needed the work. I built this house on sand, I said. And I didn't even check the soil. You know where it is, Nico said. I designed part of the foundation. I know exactly where it is. I looked at him, and I know exactly how to bring it down. The girl grabbed my hand. If you go there, you'll die. Everyone who goes there dies or disappears. That's the point. It's where they erase people. Then it's time, I said. Someone erased the building instead. We left her there, called 911 from the lobby. Anonymous tip about a kidnapping victim, and walked out into the night. Somewhere in this city, in a tower that shouldn't exist, my daughter was being processed. Her identity stripped, her memory altered, her existence optimized into Genevieve's perfect tool. But Genevieve had made one critical error. She'd taught me to find the cracks, and I was about to show her what happens when you build an empire on a foundation of lies. Brody Kensington lived in a trailer park on the edge of the industrial district, surrounded by the skeletons of buildings he'd helped demolish before his career imploded. I'd fired him 8 years ago after he'd nearly brought down an occupied residential tower because he couldn't wait for the evacuation to complete. Impatient, reckless, brilliant. Exactly what I needed. His trailer sat behind a chain-link fence decorated with no trespassing signs he'd clearly stolen from demolition sites. A rusted excavator claw served as yard art. At 3 in the morning, his lights were on. Brody had never been good at sleeping. I knocked. Nico hung back, watching the perimeter with the paranoia of someone who'd spent the last 6 hours evading professional killers. The door opened. Brody stood there in a stained undershirt and cargo pants, holding a beer. He was 52, built like a concrete block, with a kind of face that looked permanently sunburned. When he saw me, his expression shifted through surprise, suspicion, and finally dark amusement. "Roland Trump," he said, voice like gravel in a cement mixer. "You here to fire me again? Because I'm pretty thoroughly fired already. I need your help." He laughed, sharp and bitter. "My help? The man who blacklisted me, from every demolition company in 3 states, needs my help." He took a long drink. "This ought to be good." "What is it? Foundation issue? Structural collapse? Need someone to take the fall for your next mistake?" "I need someone to help me destroy a building." Brody's hand froze halfway to his mouth. "What?" Ma. A 48-story tower in the financial district. It's not in any municipal database. The permits were filed under shell companies. I consulted on the foundation 6 years ago, and now I need it gone. You want me to help you commit domestic terrorism. I want you to help me save my daughter." The load shifted. Brody's expression changed, the cynicism giving way to something more human. He looked past me at Nico, who was watching us with hollow eyes. "Come inside," Brody said. The trailer's interior was chaos blueprints taped to every surface, demolition diagrams, calculations scrawled in the margins. Empty beer bottles competed with reference books for surface space. Brody cleared a section of table and gestured for us to sit. "Talk," he said. I told him everything. The twins, Genevieve, Aegis, the biometric encryption, Sia being held in a tower designed to erase people. When I finished, Brody sat back, processing. "So your ex-wife is running an identity laundering operation out of a ghost skyscraper, and she's using your daughter as a living password." He shook his head. "Res impossible. And you think the solution is to blow up the building?" "No. I think the solution is to make them believe the building is about to collapse catastrophically, forcing an emergency evacuation. When they move Sia out, we intercept. You want to break into the fortress?" "No. I want to make the fortress panic." Brody's eyes lit up the same look he used to get right before he did something spectacularly dangerous and marginally legal. "You want to fake a structural emergency. I want to create conditions that trigger every safety protocol in that building. Seismic activity, foundation instability, enough to make staying inside more dangerous than running. And how do you propose we do that?" I pulled out my tablet, bringing up the architectural plans I'd kept from the original consultation. The tower is built on a fault line deliberately. Genevieve chose that location specifically. Something about poetic justice, according to a witness we found. But that means the building has extensive seismic monitoring. Sensors in the foundation. Automated evacuation systems. Structural integrity alarms. Systems you can't hack because they're air-gapped from outside networks, Brody said, studying the plans. "So you need someone on the inside." Or someone who can create real seismic activity. Brody looked up slowly. You want to trigger an artificial earthquake. Harmonic resonance. We don't need to shake the entire building, just convince the sensors that seismic activity is occurring. Vibrational frequencies applied at specific load points in the foundation. That's insane. That's physics. I pointed to the foundation diagram. The building has 3 primary support columns. Here, here, and here. If we can introduce synchronized vibrations at the resonant frequency of the concrete, the sensors will register it as seismic activity. The automated systems will trigger evacuation protocols. You're talking about industrial vibration equipment. Specialized frequencies. Precise timing. Brody leaned forward. And access to a basement that's probably locked down tighter than a military installation. I have the original access codes from when I consulted. The building's been operational for 6 years. Genevieve wouldn't have changed the fundamental security architecture. She's arrogant enough to think no one would try this. You built foundations for her, and now you're going to use that knowledge to tear them down. Poetic justice, I said. She appreciates that kind of symmetry. Brody stood, pacing the narrow trailer. Even if we get in, even if we set up the equipment, even if the evacuation triggers, what makes you think they'll move your daughter? What if they decide she's too valuable to risk in a panic? What if they lock down instead of evacuate? What if they lock down instead of evacuate? Nico spoke for the first time since we'd entered. Because I'll be inside. I turned. What? What? The connection works both ways. His voice was steady, determined. She feels what I feel. If I'm in the building, in danger, she'll know. She'll panic. And when she panics, her stress markers spike. Which means their biometric monitoring will go haywire. They'll think the encryption key is destabilizing. Absolutely not. Dad, it's the only way to make sure they move her. If the building seems to be collapsing and their asset is showing critical stress markers, they'll evacuate her to the backup facility. That's when we intercept. Brody watched this exchange with growing comprehension. You're not just faking a disaster. You're creating a cascading system failure. Building collapse plus asset instability. They'll have no choice but to relocate. I need a wrecking ball, Brody, I said, ignoring Nico's plan for the moment. I need you. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he moved to a locked cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a battered laptop. I still have contacts. People who owe me favors. People who don't ask questions. He opened the laptop, fingers flying across the keyboard. Industrial vibration equipment. I know a guy who demos old factories. He's got hydraulic resonators we can borrow. Well, steal. Borrowing implies we're bringing them back. Can you get them by tomorrow night? I can get them by tomorrow afternoon if you pay the rush fee. How much? For you? Everything you've got. Plus the satisfaction of watching you commit career suicide the same way I did. He grinned. You're going to lose your engineering license for this, you know. Maybe catch some terrorism charges. Definitely destroy whatever reputation you've built. Buildings can be rebuilt, I said. Daughters can't. The grin softened into something genuine. Yeah. Okay. He extended his hand. Let's shake the anthill. I shook it. His grip was like reinforced concrete, solid, uncompromising, exactly what you'd want in a foundation or a partner about to commit felony destruction of property. We need to move fast, Brody said, already making calls on a burner phone. Genevieve's people will be looking for you. Every hour we wait is another hour they have to relocate your daughter somewhere we can't find her. 24 hours, I said. Tomorrow night, we make the building scream. Nico stood by the window, looking out at the industrial wasteland beyond. His reflection in the glass looked like Sia's ghost, the same face, same expression, separated by walls and distance, and a mother who'd built an empire on their separation. She's sleeping now, he said quietly. Tomorrow, I told him, we give her something to hope for. We left Brody's trailer with a plan that violated at least 7 building codes and probably a dozen federal laws. The equipment would arrive by 6 p.m. The resonators would be positioned by 8. By 9, we'd introduce vibrational frequencies that would convince every sensor in that building that the ground beneath it was about to open up. And somewhere in the chaos, in the panic, in the evacuation, my daughter would emerge. And this time, I wouldn't be 10 minutes late. "What's the load-bearing capacity of a lie?" Nico asked as we drove back into the city. I looked at him. "What? You keep saying that. In your head. I can see you calculating it." "What's the answer?" 22 years, I said. That's how long Genevieve's lie held. But every structure has a breaking point, and tomorrow night, we find hers. The city rose ahead of us, concrete and glass and steel built on foundations most people never thought to question. Somewhere, in those towers, my ex-wife slept in her minimalist apartment, confident in her design, secure in her architecture of deception. She'd built an empire on the premise that people could be optimized, reduced to data, encrypted and controlled. Tomorrow, I'd show her what happens when the data fights back. When twins refuse to be separated, when a father finally inspects the foundation of his own life and finds it wanting, gravity is the only judge that matters. And judgment was coming. The blueprints arrived at 4 a.m., courtesy of a contact Brody had in the city's records department, someone who didn't ask questions when paid in cash and cryptocurrency. I spread them across my workshop table while Nico slept fitfully on the couch, his hand twitching as he tracked Sia's sedated dreams. Foundation plans. Structural load calculations. Seismic reinforcement specifications. Everything we'd need to identify the building's vulnerabilities and exploit them. I was halfway through the load-bearing analysis when I saw it. Bottom right corner. Date stamp, March 2004. And below that, in the technical notation I'd used for 2 decades. Structural engineer. R. Trump, P.E. My signature, my license number, my work. The coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the concrete floor. The sound woke Nico, but I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, just stared at those plans. At the proof of a betrayal so complete I'd been living inside it for 20 years without knowing. "Dad?" Nico's voice was distant. "What's wrong?" "My signature is on the steel," I said quietly. "I built my daughter's prison." I pulled up the project files from 2004 archives I'd kept meticulously because that's what engineers do. Client, Genesis Development LLC. Genesis Development, one of Genevieve's shell companies. I knew that now. But in 2004, 2 years after she'd left, I hadn't known. Hadn't thought to dig deeper. A development company had approached me about designing the foundation for a luxury residential tower. The pay was excellent. The technical challenge was interesting. Building on a known fault line required innovative engineering solutions. I'd been so proud of that work. The load shifted, memory cascading into revelation. March 2004. My workshop, smaller then, still smelling of fresh paint from the divorce renovations. Nico was 18 months old, sleeping in a playpen in the corner while I worked late nights on the Vanguard Foundation. The woman from Genesis Development had visited in person. Professional. Precise. Asked intelligent questions about seismic load distribution and resonant frequencies. I'd appreciated her technical knowledge so rare in clients. I never saw her face clearly. She'd worn designer sunglasses, kept our meetings brief. Called herself Victoria Grant, VP of Development. But her voice? Christ? Her voice had been familiar in a way I couldn't place. "This fault line," she'd said, pointing to the geological survey. "Most engineers would recommend building elsewhere." "No. When that, you're suggesting we build directly on top of it." "Why?" "Because the fault line isn't the weakness," I'd explained. "It's the foundation's relationship to the fault line that matters. If we design with the seismic activity in mind, flexible load points, isolated support columns, harmonic dampening systems, we can build something that moves with the earth instead of against it." "Poetic," she'd said. "Building on instability. It's practical. The land is cheaper. The engineering is more interesting. And if done correctly, it's actually safer than building on supposedly stable ground. Stable ground doesn't prepare you for movement. Unstable ground forces you to engineer for chaos." She'd smiled then. Behind those sunglasses, I'd sensed approval. I want resonance monitoring, she'd said. Sensors that can detect vibrational frequencies at the foundation level. Very sensitive. Able to distinguish between natural seismic activity and other sources. Other sources? Mechanical vibrations, structural stress, harmonic interference. She'd pulled out a specification sheet more detailed than anything I'd seen from a civilian client. Can you incorporate these parameters? I'd studied the specs. They were excessive, the kind of monitoring you'd see in a military installation or a research facility, not a residential tower. This is overkill for a luxury building, I'd said. Humor me. The client values thoroughness. I designed it to her exact specifications. Resonance sensors. Automated evacuation protocols. Seismic monitoring that could detect a mouse running across the basement floor. At the time, I'd thought she was paranoid. Now I understood. She wasn't paranoid. She was planning. The final meeting had been brief. She'd reviewed my designs, approved them without changes, and paid in full. As she left, she'd paused at the door. Your son, she'd said, glancing at Nico sleeping in the playpen. He's beautiful. Does he look like his mother? The question had felt intrusive, but I'd been too professionally focused to challenge it. Yes, I'd said, exactly like her. She'd nodded. Genetics are fascinating, aren't they? The way traits carry forward, the way one person can contain the entire blueprint of another. She'd adjusted her sunglasses. Thank you for your excellent work, Mr. Trump. And she'd walked out, taking my designs, my mind, my expertise, my unknowing collaboration with her. She didn't just steal my child, I said, still staring at those blueprints. She stole my mind. My habit just. Nico was beside me now, looking at the plans. You designed this building? I designed the foundation. The seismic monitoring. The very systems we're planning to exploit. I laughed. But it was hollow. Every weakness we're counting on, I built them in. The resonance sensitivity. The automated evacuations. She had me engineer her fortress with the exact vulnerabilities she'd need if she ever had to trigger a controlled panic. Why would she do that? Insurance. Genevieve always had contingency plans. If her operation was ever compromised, she'd need a way to evacuate quickly. So she had me design a building that could be cleared in minutes, if the right vibrational frequencies were triggered. I touched the blueprints. She knew. Even back then, she knew that someday she might need to run. So she had me build her both a fortress and an escape hatch. But it means she's been planning this for 20 years. Since before Sia was taken, since before I even knew I had a daughter. The full scope of her manipulation stretched out before me like a structural failure diagram. Every crack, every point of stress, every calculated weakness. The flaw in the building isn't the concrete, it's the architect. I pulled up another file. My consulting fees from Genesis Development. The amount made me sick, now $180,000 for 6 months of work. Enough to keep my struggling practice afloat after the divorce. Enough to make me grateful and unquestioning. She paid me to design my daughter's prison, I said. And I did it brilliantly. I engineered every specification she requested. Solved every technical challenge. Made the building exactly what she needed it to be. Nico picked up one of the detail sheets. But if you designed it, you know how to break it. Meet with Chloe. That's not the point. Then what is? I looked at my son, my remaining child. The one Genevieve had deemed worth keeping. And saw the question he wasn't asking. What else did she manipulate? What else was her design? You were 18 months old when I did this work, I said quietly. She'd been gone a year. I thought I was rebuilding my life, starting over. But I wasn't. I was still building according to her specifications. Even after she left, she was using me. To what end? Control, resources, expertise she couldn't access otherwise without revealing herself. I rolled up the blueprints. She couldn't stay in my life, too risky, too visible, but she could still use my skills. So she created a fake client, hired me through a shell company, extracted everything she needed, and disappeared again. Did you suspect, even a little? I wanted to say yes. wanted to claim some awareness, some subconscious recognition. But the truth was worse. I was grateful, I said. The work came exactly when I needed it. The client was professional, undemanding. The challenge was intellectually satisfying. I thought it was luck, providence, the universe giving me something to hold on to while I raised you alone. I met his eyes. I never suspected because she made it feel like salvation, not manipulation. Brody arrived then, kicking open the workshop door with 3 large equipment cases on a dolly. He took one look at my face and stopped. Bad news? Historical revelation, I said. Turns out I designed the building we're about to destroy. He whistled low. That's some Greek tragedy shit, right there. That's Genevieve, I said. She doesn't just beat you. She makes you complicit in your own defeat. So what do we do? I looked at the blueprints, my work, my expertise, my unknowing gift to the woman who'd stolen my daughter. Then, I looked at the equipment Brody had brought. Industrial vibration resonators, frequency generators, the tools needed to make a building sing its own requiem. We use it, I said. She wanted me to build a fortress with an escape hatch. Fine. Tomorrow night we trigger the escape. And when she runs, when she evacuates, when she moves Sia out of that building, we'll be waiting. Nico finished. Exactly. I turned to Brody. Show me what you brought. He opened the cases. The equipment gleamed hydraulic resonators capable of generating precise vibrational frequencies. Sensors to monitor the building's response. Timing mechanisms to synchronize the assault. This is beautiful, I said, and meant it. This is felony destruction of property, Brody corrected. But yeah, it's also beautiful. We spent the next 6 hours planning. Every resonator placement. Every frequency calculation. Every timing sequence. By 10 a.m., we had a complete operational plan. By noon, we were ready to tear down the building I'd helped Genevieve create. And somewhere in that tower, my daughter waited, unaware that the very walls around her had been designed by the father she'd never known. The betrayal was total. But so, I realized, was the knowledge. Genevieve had used my expertise against me for 20 years. Tomorrow night, I'd return the favor. The city inspector badges were perfect. Brody's contact had outdone himself. Laminated credentials with holographic seals, backed by fake entries in the municipal database that would hold up to cursory verification. I clipped mine to my belt beside my legitimate engineering license. The irony wasn't lost on me. Remember, I told Brody, as we loaded equipment into the unmarked van, we're conducting a routine seismic compliance inspection. Annual review. Boring bureaucracy. They'll want us gone as quickly as possible. And if they ask why we're here at 7 p.m., after-hours inspection. Minimizes disruption to business operations. I checked my watch. Genevieve will be in her office. She works late. That's when she does the transactions that can't leave digital traces. Nico emerged from my truck, pale and sweating. He'd barely eaten all day, too focused on tracking Sia's presence in the tower. Now, as we parked 2 blocks from the ghost building, his hands trembled. She's close, he said, voice tight. My skin feels like it's burning. That's the proximity, I said. The connection strengthening. Can you handle this? I have to. He looked at the building looming ahead, 48 stories of glass and steel that shouldn't exist. She's in there. 22 years, and we're this close. You stay in the van, Brody said. Monitor the frequencies. If anything goes wrong, you get out and call Detective Webb. I'm not running. You're not running. You're being the anchor. I handed him the monitoring tablet. The resonators will send data here. You'll see the building's response in real time. If the frequencies drift, you correct them. We need this to be perfect. One of this sec. Nico took the tablet. How long until you trigger the evacuation? 20 minutes to plant the devices. 5 minutes to calibrate. Then we turn them on and watch the building panic. I adjusted my inspector badge. 30 minutes. Maybe less if security gets suspicious. They won't, Brody said, grinning. Look, confident. We own the disaster. The ghost building's lobby was minimalist brutalism, concrete, steel, and glass arranged with the kind of aesthetic that screamed money without warmth. A security desk sat at the center, manned by 2 guards who looked former military. Professional. Alert. Exactly what I'd expected. I approached with Brody, carrying an equipment case and a clipboard loaded with official-looking forms. Evening, I said, showing my badge. Roland Trump. City Structural Division. We're here for the annual seismic compliance inspection. The lead guard frowned. We didn't receive notification. You should have. Email sent Wednesday to, I made a show of checking my clipboard. Facilities management. But you know how city bureaucracy works. We're here now. Should take about 40 minutes. I need to verify this. Of course. Call the municipal engineering office. Extension 4719. Ask for Barbara Chen. I smiled. She'll be annoyed. We're bothering a private building this late, but she'll confirm the inspection is mandatory. The guard made the call. Brody stood beside me. The picture of bored competence, a man who'd done this kind of routine work 1,000 times. The phone conversation lasted 2 minutes. I heard the guard say, seismic compliance and annual inspection, and then listened to a voice on the other end, Brody's contact, playing the role of Barbara Chen, confirm our story with bureaucratic irritation. The guard hung up. You're cleared. But you need an escort. Standard procedure, I said. Who's showing us around? I'll take you. He gestured to his partner. Ramirez, hold the desk. We rode the elevator down to the basement level, the guard watching us with professional suspicion. Brody hummed tunelessly, examining the elevator's inspection certificate like it was mildly interesting. I reviewed my clipboard, making notes about structural integrity and load distribution. The basement was exactly as I'd designed it, 3 primary support columns, each 12 feet in diameter, positioned at precise load points. Concrete, rebar, and the kind of engineering that made me proud even as it made me sick. We need to access the foundation inspection points, I said. Should be marked with yellow paint. Building code requires annual verification. The guard led us to the first column. I set down the equipment case and opened it, revealing what looked like standard structural monitoring equipment. What the guard couldn't see were the hydraulic resonators hidden in false bottoms, each about the size of a textbook. This'll take about 10 minutes per column, Brody said, pulling out a laser level. I need to watch, the guard said flatly. Suit yourself. Brody started taking measurements, calling out numbers I pretended to record, while he distracted the guard with technical jargon about compression ratios and seismic dampening coefficients. I knelt beside the column, ostensibly checking for microfractures. My hand slipped to the false bottom of the case, found the first resonator, attached it to the column's base where the concrete met the floor, using industrial adhesive that would hold for the 5 minutes we needed. The device was painted concrete gray, designed to blend. Load distribution looks nominal, I said, standing. Column 1 passes. Let's check column 2. We repeated the process. Brody's patter about structural integrity. The guard's suspicious but ultimately bored observation. My hands working quickly, precisely, planting resonators that would turn this foundation into a tuning fork. At the 3rd column, my phone buzzed. Text from Nico. Something's wrong. Her pain just spiked. They're doing something to her. I kept my expression neutral, finishing the installation. All 3 columns check out. Now we need to verify the seismic sensors in the monitoring room. Building code requires annual calibration. 3rd door on the left, the guard said. The monitoring room was a structural engineer's dream walls, covered in readouts. Screens showing real-time data from hundreds of sensors throughout the building. Seismic activity, wind load, temperature stress. Everything I'd specified when I designed this system. Beautiful setup, Brody said, and he wasn't acting. Who specified these parameters? Original architect, the guard said. Building's been running these specs since construction. Original architect did good work, I said, studying the resonance frequency displays. The building's natural frequency was 0.87 hertzes, exactly what I'd calculated 20 years ago. We need to run a calibration test. Standard procedure, You'll see the readings spike briefly, then stabilize. How briefly? 30 seconds. Maybe less. I pulled out a handheld device, ostensibly a calibration tool. Actually a remote trigger for the resonators. You might feel a slight vibration. That's normal. The guard nodded. I looked at Brody. He nodded back. I activated the resonators. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. Then, the building began to sing. It started as a hum, barely perceptible, just at the edge of hearing. The resonators fired in sequence, introducing vibrational frequencies at 0.86 hertzes. 1 hertz lower, and this glass shatters. But at 0.86 hertzes, the building didn't shatter. It resonated. Every sensor in the monitoring room lit up red. What the hell? The guard stared at the screens. That's not a calibration spike. That's... Alarms screamed. Every screen flashed warnings. Seismic activity detected. Structural integrity compromised. Evacuation protocol initiated. Earthquake. The guard grabbed his radio. All units, we have seismic activity. Initiate evacuation procedures. I made a show of checking my handheld device. That's not possible. The calibration test shouldn't trigger. I looked at the screens, letting horror cross my face. Those readings are real. That's actual ground movement. We need to evacuate, the guard said. Agreed, but I need to shut down these sensors first. If they're registering false positives during an actual seismic event, leave it. We need to move. Brody and I grabbed our equipment and followed the guard to the stairs. Throughout the building, I heard the evacuation alarms. Saw lights flashing. Felt the building's resonance through my feet. Not real earthquake, just harmonic vibration, but convincing enough to trigger every safety protocol I'd engineered. My phone buzzed again. Nico. Chaos on the upper floors. I can feel her panic. They're moving her. East stairwell. Dad. They're bringing her down. We reached the lobby. People poured from elevators and stairwells, security personnel, office workers, the kind of late-night staff that populated buildings hiding illegal operations. I scanned faces, looking for Genevieve. Looking for Sia. Then I saw them. 2 operatives in tactical gear, escorting a figure in gray scrubs. Small, female, dark hair. Even at this distance, I recognized Nico's face in hers. Sia. They were moving her toward a side exit, not the main doors where evacuees clustered, but a service exit that would lead to underground parking. There, I told Brody. We pushed through the crowd. The operatives saw us coming, saw 2 men in inspector badges, moving with too much purpose, and accelerated toward the exit. Then the building's resonance changed, shifted half a hertz lower. Windows cracked. Not shattered, but cracked spiderweb patterns spreading across glass that couldn't handle the new frequency. People screamed. The orderly evacuation became panic. In the chaos, one of the operatives stumbled. Sia broke free, running not toward the exit, but into the crowd, using panic as camouflage. She's running! I shouted to Brody. Find her! But the crowd was too thick, too many people. And somewhere in this mass of bodies, my daughter had disappeared again, free but terrified. Surrounded by the chaos we'd created. My phone rang. Unknown number, I answered. Very clever, Roland. Genevieve's voice, clinical and cold. You used my own building against me. My own specifications. Almost poetic. Where is she? Running. Frightened. Exactly where I want her. A pause. Did you really think I wouldn't plan for this? Did you think I'd design a fortress without accounting for the one man who knew its weaknesses? The load shifted. Realization hit like a failed beam. This was a trap, I said. This was insurance. I knew you'd try something. I knew you'd use your knowledge of the building. So I let you. Her voice held satisfaction. The evacuation will sort my assets from the liabilities. The chaos will flush out anyone who doesn't belong. And when it's over, I'll have my daughter back and you'll have proven you're too dangerous to remain operational." The line went dead. Around me, the building continued to resonate. Sia was somewhere in this crowd. Nico was outside, tracking her through pain and proximity. And Genevieve was watching it all unfold like a structural stress test she'd engineered from the beginning. I'd thought I was bringing down her fortress, but she'd built the fortress to fall, and I'd just triggered the controlled demolition she'd planned for 20 years. Genevieve Streetjohn stood outside the vault on the 43rd floor, watching through reinforced glass as her daughter slept under sedation. The room was clinical white walls, medical monitoring equipment, a single chair with leather restraints currently unbuckled. Sia lay on a hospital bed, her breathing steady, her face peaceful in unconsciousness. She looked exactly like Nico had at that age. The same bone structure, the same expression, even in sleep. Genevieve had carried them both for 9 months, felt them move inside her, known them as cellular possibilities before they became people. That was the problem. They'd become people. Sterling Voss appeared beside her, tablet in hand. "The sedation will wear off in 20 minutes. Security has reported unusual activity. Roland was spotted near the financial district. We should move the asset to the secondary facility." "No." Genevieve pressed her hand against the glass. "I want to talk to her first." "That's not protocol." "I'm aware." She turned to face him. "How long have we worked together, Sterling?" 8 years. And in those 8 years, have I ever deviated from protocol without reason? He considered. "No." "Then trust that I have a reason now." She moved to the vault door, entering the biometric code. 20 minutes. "Then we move her." Voss nodded, stepping back. The vault door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Genevieve entered alone. The medical equipment beeped softly. Sia's vitals displayed on screens: heart rate, oxygen saturation, brain activity, all nominal, all controlled. Genevieve had designed this room specifically for this purpose, containing biological assets while maintaining their viability. She pulled a chair beside the bed and sat, studying her daughter's face. 22 years. She'd watched Nico grow through carefully maintained distance, occasional photographs from private investigators, school records obtained through shell companies, medical files accessed through contacts in the healthcare system. But Sia, she'd monitored differently. Clinically. As data, rather than a person. It had been easier that way. "You're waking up," Genevieve said quietly, as Sia's eyes began to flutter. "The sedation is metabolizing. You'll feel disoriented." "That's normal." Sia's eyes opened. Gray. Like Genevieve's own. Like Nico's. The confusion cleared quickly, replaced by recognition and then fear. "Don't." Genevieve raised a hand. "Don't scream. Don't fight. You'll only trigger the restraint protocols, and I'd prefer to have this conversation while you're comfortable. You're..." Sia's voice was hoarse from intubation. "You're her. The woman from the records. Savannah Bradford. Genevieve Streetjohn now. I've had several names over the years. Identity is fluid when you understand how systems work." She poured water from a pitcher, held it to Sia's lips. "Drink. Dehydration impairs cognition. And I need you thinking clearly." Sia drank, watching Genevieve with the wary calculation of someone assessing threat levels. "Smart. She'd survived 3 days on the run because she was smart." "Why did you take me?" Sia asked. "I didn't take you. I retrieved you." "There's a difference." Genevieve set down the water. "You were always mine. The adoption was temporary placement, a necessary protocol to keep you off official records while maintaining your viability. You sold me. I optimized family resources. Your brother needed stability, a father. Conventional upbringing. You needed to remain a blank slate. No digital footprint, no documented existence. The Coopers provided that. They were good people who asked no questions when presented with adoption papers and sufficient financial motivation. They loved me. I'm sure they did. Love is a common emotional response to prolonged proximity." Genevieve stood, moving to the window. Beyond the glass, The city spread below millions of lives, all documented, all traceable, all vulnerable to the systems they trusted. But love doesn't change the fundamental architecture of what you are. I'm a person. You're a possibility. Genevieve turned back. Do you know what I was before I became this? She gestured at herself, the expensive suit, the biohacked youth, the clinical precision. I was nobody. Literally. A girl named Savannah Bradford who existed in a system that documented every failure, every mistake, every moment of weakness. Foster care records, juvenile detention, mental health hospitalizations. By the time I was 18, I had a file so thick it defined me more than I defined myself. Sia said nothing, but her expression shifted, still wary, but listening. The system erased me, Genevieve continued. Not overtly, quietly. Every job application rejected because of background checks. Every apartment denied because of credit history. Every relationship poisoned because one internet search revealed everything I'd been. I wasn't a person. I was a collection of documented failures walking in a person's shape. So you became this? A kidnapper? A criminal? I became an architect. Genevieve moved closer to the bed. I learned that identity isn't truth. It's infrastructure. Data in systems. Documentation in databases. Delete the data, and you delete the person. Create new data, and you create a new person. I didn't become a criminal. I became free by stealing other people's freedom, by offering them the same liberation I found. Genevieve's voice hardened. Every client who comes to Aegis is drowning in their documented past. War criminals, whistleblowers, abuse survivors, political refugees. They come to me because I offer what no government, no protection program can complete: erasure and reconstruction. I don't hide them. I delete them and build them new, using me as an encryption key, like I'm a tool. Outside, you are a victim, Genevieve said. The adopted daughter of dead parents. Yes, I arranged that accident, necessary to retrieve you, searching for biological family, vulnerable to every predator in the foster system. In here, you are valuable. Your genetic markers are unique. Your biometric profile is unhackable because it exists nowhere in any government database. You're not a tool. You're the foundation of an empire that saves lives. By erasing them, by rebuilding them. Genevieve sat again, leaning forward. Sia, I'm not your mother. I'm your architect. I designed you for a specific purpose, just like I designed your brother for his. Nico got the stability, the father, the conventional life. You got the freedom of non-existence and the power that comes with it. You mean you got the power? We both have power. You just haven't learned to use yours yet. Genevieve pulled up a screen on her tablet, showing complex genetic sequences. These are your markers. We work in Deced that was Samine. We work in Deced that with the mutations that make you irreplaceable. Do you know what they mean? That I'm a freak. That you're singular, 1 in 10 million, and I knew it the moment you were born. Genevieve's voice softened slightly, a crack in the clinical facade. The doctors ran standard genetic panels, saw the markers. Told me one twin was compromised. Their word, not mine. They suggested termination, but I looked at those markers and saw potential. For exploitation, for optimization. Genevieve stood abruptly, the moment of softness gone. You think this is cruelty. It's efficiency. Nico needed a father who'd raise him with emotional stability. You needed a mother who'd prepare you for a higher purpose. I gave you both what you needed. Makes your procus. I needed a mother who didn't abandon me. Pain is just data leaving the body, Genevieve said, her voice ice. The emotional attachment you feel to a concept of mother is conditioning. Biology plus cultural narrative. I remove the narrative. What remains is pure biological function. I'm not a function, I'm a person. You're both. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner we can move forward productively. Genevieve checked her watch. In 6 hours, I'm meeting with a client who needs a new identity. A doctor who exposed pharmaceutical corruption and now has a price on her head. I will use your biometric data to encrypt her new life. She will become untraceable. She will survive. And you will have saved a life without ever leaving this room. That's not exploitation. That's purpose. Sia stared at her, and Genevieve saw something shift in her expression. You actually believe this, Sia said quietly. You think you're saving people. I know I am. By making me a prisoner. By making you essential. Genevieve moved to the door. The restraints, the sedation, the containment, those are temporary measures until you understand your value. Once you do, you'll stay voluntarily. Because outside these walls, you're nobody. In here, you're irreplaceable. My father is looking for me. Genevieve paused at the door. Roland is looking for a daughter he never knew. When he finds you, if he finds you, what do you think happens? You become another person he has to rebuild his life around. Another responsibility. Another structural problem to solve. But freedom from ever being erased again. You erased me from his life for 22 years. I removed you from a system that would have documented and limited you. Now I'm offering you the chance to exist outside all systems, to be the key that unlocks freedom for others. Genevieve opened the door. Think about it. You have 24 hours before the next client arrives. After that, your cooperation becomes less optional. She stepped into the hallway. Sterling was waiting. The evacuation protocols, he said. If Roland breaches the building, he will. He designed the foundation. He knows every weakness. Genevieve smiled. Which is why I've prepared for exactly this scenario. When he triggers the resonators, when the building evacuates, we move Sia to the secondary facility. And Roland walks into an empty vault, having proven he's too dangerous to remain operational. You want him to break in. I want him to exhaust every option. To realize that I'm always 3 moves ahead. To understand that I didn't just steal his daughter, I made her into something he can never reclaim. Genevieve looked back through the glass at Sia. She's not his anymore. She's not even mine. She's Aegis. And Aegis is eternal. Sterling nodded. I'll prepare the transfer protocols. As he walked away, Genevieve stayed at the window, watching her daughter process their conversation. Sia's expression was complex anger, fear, but underneath, a flicker of something else. Curiosity. Good. Curiosity was the first step toward acceptance. And acceptance was the first step toward optimization. The building hummed around them. Structural resonance from the support columns Genevieve had paid Roland to design 20 years ago. He'd built her fortress so well. So thoroughly. Every specification perfect. Including the weaknesses. She'd known, even then, that someday he might come for what she'd taken. So, she'd made sure his knowledge would lead him exactly where she wanted him, into a trap disguised as a rescue, a vault that would be empty when he finally broke through. The architecture of deception. The optimization of loss. Her specialty. Outside, the city glittered. Inside, her daughter breathed. And soon, Roland would trigger the evacuation she'd designed him to trigger, proving once and for all that even the best structural engineer couldn't dismantle what he didn't fully understand. She'd built this empire on his expertise and her ruthlessness. Tomorrow, she'd prove which was stronger. The panic in the lobby was beautiful chaos, exactly what I'd engineered, but seeing it unfold in real time made the theoretical become visceral. People streamed toward exits, pushing, shoving, survival instinct overriding social courtesy. The building's resonance continued, a low hum that human ears could barely perceive but human nerves registered as wrongness. I pushed through the crowd, searching for Sia. She'd been right there, gray scrubs, dark hair, running from her captors, and then the crowd had swallowed her whole. My phone buzzed. Nico, I lost her signal. Too many people, too much interference. Dad, I can't feel her anymore. I called him. The crowd is blocking the connection. Get to the East Service entrance. She was running that direction before I lost visual. On it. Background noise, Nico, leaving the van, running. Dad, the building's resonance is increasing. Did you adjust the frequencies? No. The resonators are holding steady at 0.86 hertzes. I pushed past a security guard directing evacuees. The building is responding more dramatically than the models predicted. Is that bad? It means the structure has weaknesses I didn't account for when I designed it. I reached the east corridor. Empty. Sia had vanished. Or Genevieve introduced modifications after construction. Either way, we need to move fast. The building isn't falling, but their confidence is. I heard it then. Radio chatter from security personnel. Corridor B. That was one floor up, accessible through the service stairs. I ran. Genevieve stood in her office, watching the chaos unfold on multiple screens. The building's sensor array showed resonance patterns exactly matching what she'd anticipated. Roland had activated the resonators precisely as predicted. The evacuation was proceeding smoothly. Everything according to plan. Except Sia had escaped. Sterling. Her voice was calm, controlled. Status on the asset? Voss worked 3 tablets simultaneously, tracking security feeds. She broke free during the initial panic. Last visual confirmation was east stairwell, heading down. Teams are converging on. He stopped. We lost her. Lost her? She's in the crowd. Too many bodies. Too much movement. He pulled up thermal imaging. Building heat signature is uniform. Everyone's running. We can't distinguish her from evacuees. Genevieve's jaw tightened. This was the variable she tried to minimize Sia's unpredictability. The girl had been sedated, restrained, monitored, but Roland's rescue attempt had introduced chaos into a controlled system, and chaos created opportunities. Pull all available security to the ground floor exits, she said. She'll have to leave the building eventually. When she does, we grab her. Roland will interfere. Let him. He's unarmed, untrained, an engineer playing hero. He doesn't realize the evacuation is part of my design. Every exit is monitored. Every corridor has coverage. The building isn't falling, but everyone inside believes it is. That belief makes them predictable. And Sia? She's terrified, disoriented. She'll run toward the nearest exit, and we'll be waiting. Genevieve zoomed in on the east service entrance. That's where Roland was last spotted. That's where she'll go. Voss's tablet chimed. We have movement. Female, early 20s, gray scrubs. Second floor, heading toward the east stairs. Asset is on the move. Corridor B, Genevieve said into her radio. All units converge. Non-lethal takedown only. She's no good to us damaged. She watched the screens as her security team moved into position. 3 operatives on the second floor, 2 more at the ground floor exit. Sia was being herded exactly where Genevieve wanted her, into a controlled extraction point. Then another feed caught her attention. Roland, climbing the service stairs. Moving against the flow of evacuees. Heading up instead of down. What is he doing? Voss asked. Genevieve smiled. He's not going after Sia. He's coming after me. I took the stairs 2 at a time, following the radio chatter I'd been monitoring through the security guard's dropped radio. Sia was on the second floor. Security was converging. I had maybe 90 seconds before they grabbed her again. The corridor was chaos, people running, alarms screaming, emergency lights strobing. I scanned faces, looking for gray scrubs, dark hair, my son's features on a stranger's frame. There. At the far end of the corridor. She'd stopped, pressed against the wall, surrounded by panicking evacuees, but somehow separate. Her eyes darted, calculating escape routes. Survival mathematics. I pushed through the crowd. Sia! She turned. Our eyes met. Recognition flickered across her face, not of me, but a feature she'd seen in mirrors her whole life. The same face Nico wore. The genetic evidence of connection. Then security appeared. 3 operatives. Moving through the crowd with professional efficiency. They'd spotted her too. I ran. Grabbed her arm. Come with me, now. She yanked back. I'm Roland, your father. And we have about 30 seconds before they take you again. My father is dead. I saw the records. The records were forged. Your entire adoption was a lie. Please. I heard footsteps behind us. Close. Trust me, or trust them. Choose. She looked at the approaching operatives. Looked at me. The calculation played across her face in a second. Where? Down. I pulled her toward the service stairs. My son is at the east exit. Your brother. Nico. I don't have a brother. You have a twin. And right now, he's the only person in this building who can find you when they take you again. We hit the stairwell, started descending. He feels what you feel. Mirror touch synesthesia. Every pain you've had, he's felt. Every moment of fear, he's carried. She stumbled. I caught her. That's impossible. So is a mother who turns her daughter into an encryption key, but here we are. We reached the first floor landing. Nico, be the compass. Where is she? My phone was already ringing. Nico's voice, breathless. East exit. She's close. Dad. I can feel her proximity. It's like standing next to a mirror. 30 seconds. Get ready to move. We burst into the ground floor corridor. The east exit was ahead, glass doors leading to the street, freedom visible beyond. Nico stood just inside, scanning the evacuating crowd. When he saw us, his expression transformed. Sia stopped, stared at Nico. Her hand went to her face, touching her own features, as if confirming they were real. That's... Her voice broke. That's my face. That's your twin, I said. Now move. We ran toward the exit. Nico grabbed the door, holding it open. 20 feet. 15. 10. Then the building's resonance changed. The frequency shifted, not the resonators I'd planted. Something else. Higher. More violent. Windows didn't crack this time. They exploded, raining glass into the lobby. The floor buckled. People screamed. That's not us, Rhodey's voice crackled through my earpiece. The lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in, bathing everything in red. And in that red light, I saw her. Genevieve stood at the top of the main staircase, backlit by emergency floods. She held a remote device. You built this foundation well, Roland? Her voice carried over the alarms. But I modified it, after construction. Fail-safes you never knew about. Resonators in the upper floors that respond to my frequency, not yours. The building shook harder. This wasn't simulation. This was actual, structural stress. You're bringing down your own building, I said. I'm controlling the collapse. Selective failure points. The ground floor corridors will seal. The exits will become inaccessible. Everyone inside will be trapped until I decide to let them out. She smiled. You wanted to rescue your daughter. Instead, you've helped me contain everyone who knows too much. My clients, my competitors. You. One controlled demolition, and all my problems disappear under concrete and steel. Sia gripped my arm. She's insane. She's efficient, I said. And we're out of time. The east exit's frame twisted. The glass shattered. The opening began to collapse. Nico, get her out. I shoved Sia toward my son. Now. Nico grabbed her. They dove through the closing exit, hitting the pavement outside as the frame buckled completely. I turned back to Genevieve. She watched me from the stairs, her expression clinical. You have a choice, Roland, she said. You can try to follow them and die in the collapse, or you can stay, and we can discuss the terms of your daughter's return. Behind her, I heard the groan of overstressed steel, the crack of failing concrete. She'd triggered actual structural failure in the upper floors. The building was going to fall, and she was standing in the path of destruction. You're bluffing, I said. You won't kill yourself. You're bluffing. I'm giving you a choice. Save yourself, or save the truth about what I've built here. She gestured to the offices above. Aegis exists in those servers. Delete them, and my clients are exposed. Leave them, and my empire continues. The building groaned again, louder. 30 seconds until critical failure, she said. Choose. I looked at the collapsed exit. Then I looked at Genevieve, standing in her fortress as it came down around her. I smiled. You built this house on sand, I said. Let's see how it falls. And I ran toward the data center. I'd miscalculated. The data center wasn't where I'd remembered it. Genevieve had moved operations after construction. What I found instead, 3 floors up in what should have been executive offices, was a room full of servers and one very scared IT technician. Get out, I shouted over the alarms. The building's coming down. He didn't need to be told twice. I stared at the server's rows of black monoliths, humming with encrypted data. 23 clients, billions in untraceable assets. Lives erased and rebuilt, all dependent on the girl I'd just sent outside. My phone buzzed. Brody. Roland. The upper floors are actually failing. This isn't simulation anymore. You have maybe 2 minutes before the cascade reaches ground level. Get out. I grabbed a fire extinguisher from the wall and smashed it through the primary server rack. Sparks flew. Drives cracked. But it wasn't enough. These systems had redundancies, off-site backups, fail-safes. I'd never breach in 2 minutes. Genevieve's voice came over the building's PA system. Touching, Roland, destroying what you can't understand. But those servers are already backing up to the cloud. You've accomplished nothing except ensuring you die in this building. The floor tilted. Not simulation. Actual structural shift. I ran. Nico held Sia as the building groaned behind them. She was shaking, her hands gripping his arms with desperate strength. Around them, evacuees scattered into the street, putting distance between themselves and the tower that was now visibly swaying. He's still inside, Sia said. Your father is still. I know. Nico's voice was tight. He could feel Roland's adrenaline through some phantom echo of the twin connection, or maybe just normal fear. He's trying to destroy their data. He won't make it out. He will. He calculates everything. He always has The building's resonance changed again. Lower frequency, more ominous. Windows on the 20th floor exploded outward, raining glass onto the street below. Then Nico felt it. A spike of pain in his chest. Not his pain, not Sia's. Someone else's. She's moving, he said. Genevieve. She's heading to the garage. Sia pulled back to look at him. How do you know? I don't know. But I can feel. He stopped. There's a convoy. Underground parking. She's evacuating her assets before the building falls. Brody's truck screeched to a halt beside them. He leaned out the window, face grim. Your dad's still inside. The north stairwell should still be. No. Nico's voice was certain. He'll come out the garage. That's where Genevieve is going. That's where he'll follow. The garage is underground. If that building collapses, then we better move fast. Nico pulled Sia toward the truck. Get in. We're going to the garage exit on 7th Street. I hit the garage level at a dead run, lungs burning, legs screaming. Behind me, I heard the progressive collapse beginning each floor pancaking onto the one below. The cascade of failure I'd studied in 100 disaster reports now happening in real time. The garage was chaos. Black SUVs with tinted windows lined up at the exit ramp, security personnel loading equipment, and in the lead vehicle, visible through the windshield, Genevieve. She saw me at the same moment I saw her. Our eyes met across 50 feet of concrete. She smiled, said something to her driver, and the convoy started moving. I ran for the exit ramp. The vehicles accelerated. I wasn't going to make it. Then Brody's truck came down the ramp from the wrong direction, tires squealing, engine roaring. He'd loaded the hydraulic excavator from his trailer, the one he used for demolition jobs. The machine's arm swung out, blocking the ramp. The lead SUV slammed on its brakes. The vehicles behind it crashed into each other in a chain reaction of crumpling metal. I reached the stopped convoy as Brody jumped from the excavator. You owe me a truck and an excavator, he shouted. Bill, me later. I moved to the lead vehicle. Genevieve sat in the back seat, her expression shifting from confidence to calculation. The driver reached for his weapon. I grabbed a tire iron from Brody's truck and smashed the driver's window. Out. Now. The driver came out fighting. Former military, trained, efficient. He landed 2 solid hits before Brody tackled him from behind, and they went down in a tangle of limbs and violence. I yanked open Genevieve's door. She sat calmly, hands folded, watching me with clinical interest. "You stole 22 years, I said. "I'm taking back the rest. You can't take what never belonged to you." She gestured at the collapsing building above. "I optimized our family, 1 child for stability, 1 for utility. You got the son, I got the daughter. Equitable distribution. Children aren't assets to distribute. Everything is an asset if you understand its value." She stood, stepping out of the vehicle with the composure of someone at a business meeting. Not a structural collapse. "You're angry. I understand. But Roland, think practically. Sia is 22. You can't reclaim those years. You can't undo what I've built. All you can do is make this more difficult than it needs to be." Above us, the building groaned. Concrete dust rained down. The progressive collapse was reaching the lower floors. "We need to move," Genevieve said calmly. "This garage will collapse in approximately 90 seconds. I have a vehicle. You have righteousness. Only one of those will get you out alive. Look at me, Genevieve." I grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to meet my eyes. "Look at the flaw in your design. You optimized for efficiency, but you forgot the one variable you couldn't control. Human connection. Sia and Nico feel each other across distance, through walls, through all your careful separation. You can't encrypt that. You can't delete it. It exists despite your design. The twin connection is a biological anomaly, interesting but ultimately irrelevant to the twin connection. It's not magic. It's survival." End quote. The voice came from behind me. Nico stood at the garage entrance, Sia beside him. They held hands, mirror images, finally occupying the same space. Genevieve's clinical composure cracked. For the first time since I'd known her, I saw genuine emotion cross her face, not fear. Recognition. "You should have run," she said to them. "You should have taken the opportunity I gave you and what?" Sia stepped forward. "Lived separately? Continued being your encryption key while he lived a normal life? That was never optimization. That was cruelty disguised as efficiency. I gave you purpose. You gave us pain." Nico's voice cracked. 22 years of phantom injuries, headaches, sensations I couldn't explain. "You didn't optimize us. You broke us and called it design." The building shuddered. A support column near the garage entrance buckled. 45 seconds, Genevieve said, her composure returning. "We're out of time for family therapy. Get in the vehicle or die in the collapse. Your choice." I looked at my children, both of them, together for the first time in their conscious lives. They looked at each other, some wordless communication passing between them. Then Nico moved to the second SUV in the convoy. The one that had crashed into the lead vehicle. The armored one, with Sterling Voss visible through the window, unconscious from the impact. "She's in here," Nico said quietly. "I can feel her. There's someone else in this vehicle." Sia joined him. They pressed their hands against the metal. "A girl," Sia whispered. "Young. Terrified." I understood. "Another asset. Another key. Number 7, Sia said. "The girl from the medical facility." She said there were others. Genevieve's expression hardened. "That asset is classified. You can't." Nico grabbed the armored door handle. It was locked, reinforced, designed to withstand forced entry. He pulled. Nothing. "Nico, we don't have time." He pulled again. The metal groaned. His face contorted with effort or pain or fury, or all three at once. Sia placed her hands over his. Together, they pulled. The door shrieked. The metal warped. And then, with a sound like breaking bones, the entire door tore free from its hinges. Nico stumbled back, the door still in his hands. Adrenaline and twin bond connection, creating strength that shouldn't exist. Inside the vehicle, a girl, maybe 16, pale, shaking, stared at them with wide eyes. "We've got you," Saya said, reaching in. "We've got you." Above, the building's collapse reached the garage level. The ceiling began to crack. 20 seconds, Brody shouted. Genevieve moved toward her vehicle. I grabbed her arm. "You're not running. You're not running. Then we both die. Is that what you want? To prove a point?" I looked at her, this woman I'd loved, married, built a life with. This architect of deception who'd turned our children into tools and called it optimization. "The blueprint was wrong from the start," I said. "And it's time to demolish it completely." I shoved her toward Brody's truck. "Get them out! All of them!" Brody grabbed Genevieve. Nico carried the girl from the vehicle. Sia ran beside them. They piled into the truck as the garage ceiling came down in sections. I ran behind them. Debris raining down, the world collapsing in controlled chaos. We hit the exit ramp as the garage imploded behind us. The truck roared up the ramp, through the gap in traffic, onto the street. Behind us, the ghost building folded in on itself, 48 stories of glass and steel, and encrypted lies collapsing into rubble. We stopped 3 blocks away. Climbed out. Watched the dust cloud rise where Genevieve's empire had stood. Nico and Sia stood together, still holding hands, watching their mother's creation become debris. Genevieve sat on the curb, handcuffed by the zip ties Brody had produced. She watched the collapse with the same clinical assessment she applied to everything. "You destroyed it," she said. 20 years of work." "I destroyed a building," I said. "The work was destroying people." "That stops now." Detective Webb's sirens approached. Someone had called in the collapse. Soon this street would be flooded with emergency services, investigators, questions I'd spend months answering. But right now, in this moment, my children stood together under the dust-filled sky, and for the first time in 22 years, the structure of my family was finally sound. The FBI arrived before the dust settled. I'd called them 6 hours earlier, from Brody's trailer, while we were planning the building's resonance attack. Anonymous tip about Aegis. About the identity brokerage. About the servers full of encrypted criminal enterprises. I'd given them everything: shell, company names, client lists I'd pieced together from my own investigation, the location of the ghost building. They'd been watching. Waiting. Planning their own raid. We'd just done their demolition work for them. Agent Sarah Kozlov approached as paramedics pulled the young girl number 7. Sia had called her from Brody's truck. Kozlov was mid-40s, gray suit, the kind of competent weariness that came from years of chasing white-collar criminals who always seemed to stay one step ahead. "Mr. Trump," she showed her badge. "We've been tracking Aegis for 18 months. You just destroyed our entire case." "I destroyed a building," I said. "The case was in the servers. And those servers are now buried under 48 floors of rubble, conveniently destroying evidence. Inconveniently for you. Conveniently for 23 criminals who now have their encryption key destroyed and their identities vulnerable." I gestured to Genevieve, still zip-tied on the curb. "But you have the architect. That should be worth something." Kozlov studied Genevieve. Genevieve Street John, also known as Savannah Bradford, Victoria Grant, and approximately 12 other aliases. "We've been trying to connect you to Aegis for over a year." Genevieve said nothing. Just watched the rubble with that clinical detachment, calculating her next move. "She's not going to talk," I said. "She's too smart for that." But her partner, Sterling Voss, he's still in that second SUV, and he strikes me as someone who'll negotiate when faced with federal charges. Kozlov's team was already extracting Voss from the crashed vehicle. He was conscious now, bleeding from a head wound, looking significantly less composed than Genevieve. "Mrs. Street John," Kozlov said formally, "you're under arrest for identity fraud, conspiracy to commit wire fraud, money laundering, and about 15 other charges we'll add once we dig through what's left of your operation." "I want my lawyer," Genevieve said. Her first words since the arrest. Calm. Controlled. "Of course you do." Kozlov nodded to her agents. They pulled Genevieve to her feet, replacing Brody's zip ties with actual handcuffs. As they led her past me, Genevieve stopped, looked at Nico and Sia, still standing together. I optimized for the wrong variables, she said quietly. I should have predicted the bond would be stronger than the separation. You should have predicted they were people, not equations, I said. She almost smiled. Structural engineer to the end. Always looking for the human flaw in the design. She glanced at the rubble. You won, Roland, but you lost your license, your reputation, and possibly your freedom. Was it worth it? I looked at my children. Sia's hand and Nico's. Their faces mirror images, finally occupying the same space. The same moment. Every gram of steel, I said. They took her away. The paramedics wanted to check us all for injuries. Nico had bruises on his hands from ripping the armored door off. Sia had restraint marks on her wrists. I had cuts from broken glass, concrete dust in my lungs, and the kind of exhaustion that comes from tearing down everything you've built. But we were alive. Together. Nico sat on the ambulance bumper, Sia beside him. They hadn't stopped touching since the garage hands, shoulders, the constant physical confirmation that the other was real. The noise, Nico said suddenly. It stopped. Sia looked at him. What noise? The pain. The phantom sensations. I've had them my whole life. Headaches, injuries that weren't mine, feelings I couldn't explain. He touched his temple. Right now, for the first time in 22 years, there's silence. Not emptiness, just peace. I feel it too, Sia whispered. I thought I was alone. Every moment, I thought I was the only person in the world who felt this isolated. But I wasn't alone. You were there. I was there, Nico confirmed. Feeling everything. Bleeding when you bled. Hurting when they hurt you. I just didn't understand why. Mirror touch synesthesia, I said, joining them. It's rare even in twins. But when you're separated, when one twin is in constant distress, the connection becomes survival mechanism. Your nervous system synchronized to maintain the bond Genevieve tried to sever. Is it permanent? Sia asked. The silence? I don't know. The medical literature is limited. But now that you're together, now that the chronic stress is removed, I stopped. I don't have answers. Just hypotheses. Sounds familiar, Nico said with a slight smile. You always were better with structures than people. I'm learning. I sat between them. I'm sorry. For not finding you sooner. For not questioning the lie. For 22 years of... Stop. Sia touched my arm. I knew you'd come. I saw it in my dreams. You dreamed about me? About someone. She looked at her hands. The Coopers, my adoptive parents, they were good people. They loved me. But I always felt incomplete, like I was waiting for something. Then they died in the car accident. Her voice caught. I found the adoption papers in their safe deposit box. That's when I started searching. That's when I found out about Genevieve. About you, about Nico, and walked right into her trap. I said. I was naive. I thought confronting her would give me answers. Instead, she sedated me and made me into a tool. Sia's hand tightened on Nico's, but I never stopped fighting. Even sedated, even restrained. Some part of me knew that if I could just hold on long enough, we'd find you, Nico finished. You'd find me. Detective Webb approached, notebook in hand. Mr. Trump, I need your statement. All three of you. And I should warn you, the building collapse is going to trigger multiple investigations. Structural failure, possible terrorism charges, unlawful destruction of property. I triggered a resonance cascade in a privately owned building to force an evacuation during a legitimate safety inspection. I said. The building's subsequent collapse was due to modifications made after my original consultation modifications. I had no knowledge of and no responsibility for. That's creative. Webb said. Your lawyer is going to earn their fee. Probably. I stood. But first, I need to know the girl we pulled from the vehicle. Number 7. What happens to her? Child Protective Services, FBI Victim Assistance. She'll be taken care of. Webb looked at Sia. There may be others. Girls like you. Assets that Genevieve used for various operations. We're going to need your help identifying them. There are assets that were go. Whatever you need, Sia said. And Mr. Trump. Webb's expression softened slightly. For what it's worth, you did good work here. Reckless, illegal, probably certifiably insane work. But good. He walked away to coordinate with the FBI. Brody appeared, covered in concrete dust, grinning like he just won the lottery. That was the most fun I've had since you fired me. You destroyed your truck and your excavator. Worth it. He looked at the rubble. Besides, I just helped tear down a building designed by Roland Trump, using techniques taught by Roland Trump. That's going in my obituary. If we don't both end up in prison, Brody corrected. When we end up in prison. But hey, at least we'll have great stories. He clapped me on the shoulder and headed toward the police cordon, already talking to reporters who'd swarmed the collapse site. I turned back to Nico and Sia. They sat together in the ambulance, backlit by emergency lights, two halves of a whole that Genevieve had tried to optimize into separate functions. The foundation holds, I said quietly. Nico looked up. What? It's something I say after inspections. When a building has stress fractures, load failures, visible damage, but the foundation holds, it means the structure can be repaired. Rebuilt. The damage isn't terminal. Are we the foundation? Sia asked. You're the structure, I said. The family. And for 22 years, it carried stress it shouldn't have had to bear. Separation, lies, manipulation. But the foundation, the connection between you, it held. Even when Genevieve tried to demolish it, even when I failed to see it, the foundation held. I sat between them again, put my arms around both their shoulders. I can't give you back the years she took, I said. I can't undo the pain. I can't rebuild what never had a chance to form, but I can promise you this from now on. We build honestly. No optimization. No efficiency calculations. Just family. Flawed, complicated, human family. Sia leaned her head against my shoulder. I don't even know you. Well, I know, but we have time now. All the time we should have had. Nico leaned in from the other side. What if the connection comes back? The pain? Nico leaned in from the other side. The pain? Then we deal with it. Together. Not separated. Not optimized. I looked at the rubble where Genevieve's empire had stood. Some cracks you fix. Some you leave to let the light in. We'll figure out which is which. The three of us sat there as emergency crews worked the collapse site, as FBI agents cataloged evidence, as the sun began to rise over the city, painting the dust cloud in shades of gold and orange. Somewhere in that rubble were servers full of encrypted identities, criminal enterprises destroyed, lives that would have to be rebuilt without Aegis's careful erasure. But here, on this ambulance bumper, surrounded by the chaos of Genevieve's collapsed design, here, the foundation finally held. And on that foundation, we'd build something new, something honest, something whole. 6 months later, the brownstone on Oakwood Street had good bones but terrible everything else. Cracked plaster, rotted floor joists. A foundation that had settled unevenly over 70 years, creating a visible slope from east to west. Most buyers had walked away after the inspection. I bought it the same day. Hand me the level, I said to Nico, who was holding a support beam in place while I checked the alignment. He passed it over, then winced slightly. Sia just hit her thumb with a hammer. How bad? She's cursing in 3 languages. So not serious, just annoying. He smiled. The connection is weird when it's not life-threatening. Like having a radio playing in the next room. Present, but not overwhelming. Remundo. Remund of Remun. I checked the level. The beam was true. That's good. Better than the alternative. Yeah. Nico steadied the beam, while I drilled pilot holes. The doctors still can't explain it. They've done every scan, every test. Neurologically, we shouldn't be able to feel each other's sensations. But we do. Male. Physics doesn't care what should be possible. Only what is. I drove the first screw. The question is, can you live with it? I don't want to live without it. He looked toward the kitchen, where Sia was installing cabinet hardware with the focused intensity she brought to every task. 22 years I thought I was broken. Turns out I was just connected. The beam secured, we moved to the next section. The brownstone was a 3-story gut renovation, the kind of project that would take months, maybe a year. No timeline. No client breathing down our necks. Just us, rebuilding something old into something livable. The contractors I used to hire had scattered after the ghost building collapse. The engineering license I'd spent 20 years building was under suspension pending investigation. The reputation I'd carefully cultivated was now synonymous with that guy who brought down a skyscraper. But I had my children. Both of them. And a house that needed honest work. Fair trade. Sia appeared in the doorway, thumb wrapped in duct tape. The cabinet hinges are misaligned. The doors won't close flush. European hinges? I asked. American. But installed by someone who didn't understand tolerance margins. She held up a screwdriver. I'm fixing it. Complain away. She smiled, that same smile I'd seen on Nico's face 1,000 times, now doubled, mirrored. This house is a disaster. I wanted the Santarone and Miko's Sosum. This house is a project, I corrected. There's a difference. Now, is there? A disaster happens to you. A project is something you choose. I gestured at the exposed studs, the torn-up floors, the years of neglect made visible. We chose this. We chose a money pit with foundation issues, and probably asbestos in the walls. We don't build perfect houses anymore, I said. We build honest ones. She considered this, then nodded. I'll be in the kitchen, fixing other people's mistakes. After she left, Nico looked at me. She's getting better. At being here. At not running. She spent 22 years in survival mode. That doesn't switch off overnight. I know. I feel it sometimes. The panic. The need to map exits, to plan, escape routes. He touched his chest. But it's getting quieter. The fear. For both of you? For both of us. We worked through the afternoon. Nico and I framed new walls where old ones had rotted. Sia refinished the original hardwood floors, revealing oak that hadn't seen daylight in decades. Brody stopped by around 3, carrying coffee and pastries from the bakery down the street. Brought provisions, he announced. Also the news. What news? I asked, setting down my nail gun. Genevieve's trial date got set. 8 months from now. Federal court. He handed me a coffee. Sterling Voss took a plea deal. He's testifying against her in exchange for 15 years instead of life. She'll fight it, I said. Oh, absolutely. She's hired the best defense money can buy. Literally. Turns out Aegis had offshore accounts we didn't know about. Brody bit into a pastry. But the FBI recovered enough server fragments to identify 17 clients. 3 are already in custody. The rest are running. Sia joined us, wiping sawdust from her hands. What happens to the others? The girls like me? Most were found, returned to families or placed in protective custody. The FBI is looking, but people who don't want to be found usually aren't. Sia finished. Yeah, we stood there, drinking coffee in the skeleton of a house, thinking about the girls who'd been turned into tools and the empire that had fallen but left debris everywhere. There's something else, Brody said. I got a call from a documentary producer. They want to do a piece on the ghost building collapse. Interview us. Tell the story. No, I said immediately. Hear me out. It could help. Public opinion? Your license reinstatement? No. I looked at Nico and Sia. This isn't a story. It's our life. And I'm done letting other people engineer the narrative. Brody nodded. Fair enough. I'll tell them to lose our number. He left an hour later, taking his coffee cups and his news. The brownstone settled into comfortable silence, just the sound of tools, footsteps, the occasional curse when someone encountered another hidden problem. Around sunset, I found both my children on the back porch. The yard was overgrown, wild, but the porch itself had good bones. They sat on the steps, shoulders touching, watching the light fade. I sat beside them. "The foundation inspector came by yesterday," I said, "while you were both out getting supplies." "And?" Nico asked. "The settling is stable. Cosmetic damage, but structurally sound. The cracks you see in the basement, they're old. The house has already made peace with them. Some cracks you fix," Sia said quietly. "Some you leave to let the light in." Exactly. We sat there as the sun dropped below the roofline of the house, across the street. The city hummed around us, traffic, voices, life continuing. "I've been thinking," Sia said, "about Genevieve, about what she said in the vault." "What did she say?" I asked. "That outside, I was a victim. Inside her system, I was valuable." Sia looked at her hands. "And I've been trying to figure out if she was completely wrong or partially right." "She was completely wrong," Nico said immediately. "Was she?" "I was adopted by good people who died in a suspicious accident. I was alone, searching for family, vulnerable. She wasn't wrong about the victim part, but she was wrong about the solution," I said. "Value doesn't come from being useful to a system. It comes from being yourself, connected to people who see you as more than function." "Family," Sia said. "Family isn't DNA," I said. "It's the people who dig you out of the rubble." Nico smiled. Literally, in our case, I agreed. A car pulled up in front of the house. Detective Webb got out, carrying a folder. "Mr. Trump," he said, climbing the porch steps. "Got a minute?" "Always." He handed me the folder. "This is unofficial, off the record. But I thought you should know. We found the last girl. Number 12. She was in Vancouver, living under a new identity Genevieve had created. She's safe now, being reunited with her family." But, Sia's hand found Nico's. "All of them?" "All the ones we know about," Webb said. "Could be more. Genevieve's not talking, but the ones we identified from the server fragments, they're all safe." "Thank you," I said. Webb nodded. He looked at the house. The exposed framing, visible through the windows. The controlled chaos of renovation. Building something new? Rebuilding something old. I corrected. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "One is about perfection. The other is about honesty." I gestured at the brownstone. "This house has been standing for 70 years. It's settled, cracked, imperfect. But it's still here, still solid. We're just helping it be what it's always been." Webb smiled. After he left, the three of us sat in the gathering dark. "I have a question," Sia said. "What happens when this house is done? When it's renovated and livable and perfect?" "It'll never be perfect," I said. "That's not the goal." "Then what is?" I looked at the brownstone cracked plaster, uneven floors, 70 years of imperfect history visible in every corner. "The goal is honest. The goal is sound. The goal is building something that holds its weight without pretending it has no stress fractures." "Like us," Nico said. "Like us." We went inside as the streetlights flickered on. Tomorrow, we'd sand floors, replace joists, patch walls and paint ceilings, and continue the slow work of making something broken into something whole. But tonight, we ordered pizza and sat in the empty living room, surrounded by sawdust and possibility. Nico felt when Sia burned her mouth on hot cheese. Sia felt when Nico laughed too hard and pulled a muscle. The connection between them hummed softly, not pain now, but presence. Not survival, but comfort. And, I sat between them, a structural engineer who'd spent 20 years analyzing failures, finally understanding what it meant to build something that would last. Not because it was perfect, because it was true. Outside, the city continued its endless construction, buildings rising, buildings falling, foundations being tested by time and stress and the weight of what they carried. But here, in this brownstone on Oakwood Street, the foundation held, and on it we built our honest house, brick by brick, truth by truth, together. What is the load-bearing capacity of a lie? 22 years. But the truth holds forever.